I am the current beach representative, and I would enjoy to continue doing that.
Now, that's the HBAC as opposed to the precinct, right?
Right.
I'd actually like to
where's
do
the
both of them this year. If
Where's the
that-
precinct on this list? That,
the precinct is it here?
I don't see it.
No.
Well, it's supposed to be here.
no, it should be. I mean,
But-
we've always had a formal rep to the precinct. I believe, Rick, that, Fred, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Beach Commission is actually a multi-year appointment, isn't it?
No, it isn't. I have
Oh,
a
it's not?
one-year commitment.
Okay, okay, okay.
If
I was
this is
thinking
the
it
time
was
to do
multiple
it, we have a 2-year, which is filled by John Nyan, and a 1-year, and I have the 1-year term.
Okay, I would make a motion then to appoint Rick as representative to the HBAC,
Second.
Hampton Beach Advisory Commission.
I,
Seconded by Bill Lally. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We didn't shoot the precinct. We should
Well,
do it
let's
now.
get the alternate to the
Okay.
Beach Commission. How has that worked? Do we have an alternate last year?
We haven't. It's not. I don't think you necessarily have an alternate. I don't think that there is no such thing as an
Yeah.
alternate
I think
there.
you're right.
Okay.
It's like
I
if you're
didn't
not-
remember one.
They've other people have tried to send someone in their place, and it's
Yep,
not,
okay.
doesn't work that way.
So
with
it's your
the state
take is
commission.
we don't need an alternate to that.
No, we do at the Hampton Beach
Village Precinct.
Village Precinct, which Jerry's been doing for the last year.
Yeah.
I started doing that in the Heritage Committee, and they're both the same night, so it was just too hard for me to go to both of them. So Jerry last year went to the precinct, and
I'm fine with you having it this year.
yeah, and you can do the Heritage if you,
I'd like to do the Heritage.
because I told them you're
I love
coming.
history.
And I'm going to be a member there anyway if the
Okay.
meetings don't work.
I would make a motion then to appoint Rick as the representative to the precinct.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I would make a motion to appoint Jerry as the alternate to the precinct.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
I'm in favor of me.
Right. Representative to the Recreation Committee.
I was on that for a while, Mr. Chairman. I enjoyed that. I think Mr. Bateman was on it last
Right.
year, but I wouldn't mind.
I'll
going
nominate
back.
Bill for that.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 4. Bill abstains, I guess. 1. Alternate to the Recreation Commission.
I'll volunteer for that.
Okay. I'll
Second.
nominate Jerry.
Rick, were you gonna
Yeah,
gonna
I'll
nominate volunteer?
No.
You want to volunteer?
Pardon?
Did you want to volunteer for that? Okay.
Okay. I'll nominate Jerry.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Representative to the Cable Committee. I did that last year. I have some concerns as to how long that has dragged out. I believe that I could have done a better job pushing that process along. It's largely a function of the legal aspects.
So I'll
of
nominate you for the representative
But
to
I
that.
think I did learn from that, and I think hopefully I could do a better job
Mhm.
this time pushing
Okay,
it
I'll
along.
second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Alternate rep to the Cable Committee.
I was on before, Dick, so I wouldn't mind being the alternate.
Okay.
if
I'll
no one
nominate
else
Bill
wants it.
Lally as the alternate
I'll
to the
second
Cable.
that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kind of assumed they didn't want to hang around till 10 o'clock.
Going out.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. First item, election of chairman.
I'd like to nominate Bill Lally. I think when he was chairman, he was very impartial and very consistent and very fair. And I think everyone here is capable of doing a good job, but I think, in my opinion, Bill would make an excellent chairman. I think that, if we're not going to have a second here, I think we've already seen a lack of being impartial, consistent, or fair.
Motion fails for lack of a second.
I'd like to make a motion that we re-elect Mr. Nichols as the chairman for this coming year.
I will second to open the discussion.
Okay. Yep. I made some notes here, so when it comes to where one sits for electing a chairman, I don't stand on convention. I go by performance. And over the last year, here is what I have seen and observed with Mr. Nichols. Dick works this job as a selectman and its chairman as if it was a full-time job. This man puts in 30 plus, maybe 40 hours a week on this job. I know that. I put in hours. He beats me. Now here's what he works on. He's at Concord giving testimony on behalf of the town of Hampton and the Board of Selectmen for the Evergreen, which we finally eliminated. Spiking. Retirement system. I was with him when he gave his testimony to the Senate on the retirement system. Dick is working a working relationship with all of our representatives. There's going to be a lot of downshifting of costs this year by the state. And it's going to impact us unless we really work the issue, and we're working it. That retirement system alone can cost us big bucks over the next 2 years. It can hit us this year hard. So we're in Concord. Dick's in Concord as our rep primarily. Dick has worked with the assessor, a brand new assessor to the town of Hampton. Dick is assured that he understands this town. He's working with the assessor to assure that this vision appraisal assessing that's going on now is done accurately and consistently. Dick has put a lot of effort into that. And he's learned new terminology while he's done it. Dispersion factors, equity ratios, and things like that. It's been a little bit of fun, too. Dick has worked laboriously with our lawyer, Matt Upton, on collective bargaining, successfully concluding with an agreement for Article 11 by a significant vote. And I think we're close on several others. I really do. I got some vibes from other areas. I think we're close on this collective bargaining. He has put hours in on that. The governor from Florida just recently made statements, and he's repeated it several times. He says there's nothing wrong with collective bargaining as long as both parties know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. They know what we're doing. We're working hard at it. And I think we can achieve an equitable resolution between the two of us, two parties. Dick has written and coordinated reviews for the people that report to the Board of Selectmen. Coordinated the inputs from the various people, all the board members, hammered out moderate positions, and has sat with the people in question and has discussed the reviews face to face. Dick analyzes the finances, town finances, stays on top of the issues, very analytical, and offers a perspective that helps us all. Has led to bids and proposal changes this year as a result of that. All of these I've observed firsthand, and is the reason why I've nominated Mr. Nichols to repeat as chairman for this year.
I think that you brought out some good points, Jerry, but you say those points like no one else here took part. There's 5 people here. There's 5 people all working, and we all have our ways that we're doing it. I can see that it's going to go this way, but I think it's important to remember that we have department heads that we pay excellent money to, and they're the ones that are supposed to be doing a lot of this work. And frankly, I do think that things can be micromanaged, and that's something that I'll be keeping my eyes open for this year. Thank you.
May I comment on that? I would like to respond. May I respond?
Yeah, and please do.
Yeah, okay. Listen, Dick has been in the boat with the rest of us. We have all rowed in the same direction. We all put our time in. I got my hands literally and figuratively in the wastewater treatment plant right now. We all have contributed heavily. They could not have gotten us to buy into the collective bargaining if we all hadn't understood it. And
Jerry, that's been going on for 7 years, I hate to tell you, and it's been a process.
So,
And so we all are sitting here, we all have one vote, we all have the same amount of power, and we all do our jobs. So I just want you, the way that you're saying it, you're making me feel like I didn't do anything all year. So I'm against it.
that's not what I implied.
Okay, well, that's how I feel.
I'm done.
Shall we bring it to a vote, or?
Please do. We know how it's going. I think it was probably decided earlier.
All in favor?
I am.
All opposed? Motion carries 2-1. All abstaining?
I'll abstain.
2 abstaining. Motion carries 2-1. Okay.
We need to elect the vice chair, I think.
That's
I'll
what I'm-
nominate Bill Lally.
I'll second that motion.
We want to talk about the Selectmen's 2012 goals. Dick, would you like to start
Sure.
this conversation?
I jotted a few down that I thought would be good ones, and I jotted a couple of ideas just to get them out there. I'm not sure if they're something we want to go with or not. One is, I think we have the capability to continue with the goal we've had for the last 3 years of a flat municipal tax rate. It would take a more aggressive use of the undesignated fund balance than we've used in the past. We used nothing last year. We used $195,000 the year before, and we used $495 the year before, $500,000. However, I think it's something that is achievable in 2012 without even coming close of drawing it down to the minimum 5% level. The UFB now is about 5.4 million or so. The DRA minimum of 5% would be at about a 2.7, 2.8. So that would be one. The actual decision on the UFB would be something we wouldn't make that decision until September or October when the tax rate is about to be
So are
set.
you suggesting by that we suggest, when we're looking at the budget, we want to maintain a flat budget also?
No, the budget's already done for this year. I'm talking about the 2012 tax rate.
Oh, okay, I understand that. Okay, so you're not wrapping your arms around the budget that we'll be working on this fall
No,
at
that
all.
would affect 2013.
About the tax rate, the tax setting mechanism when we get to in
That takes
October.
place in
I'm with you
September,
there. I'm just
October.
wanting to make sure that there's two separate animals. Okay, go ahead.
Second one, I would suggest, we talked about this a little bit last week, I think it was, in terms of the timeliness of selectmen-sponsored warrant articles or whatever, and I'll just throw something out there that we basically set a process where first drafts of selectmen-sponsored warrant articles show up no later than November 1st, and final drafts are completed by November 13th. Notice I used final draft. That doesn't prevent tweaking during December leading up to January 8th or whatever, but I think if we draw some lines in the sand, such as I had suggested, again, first drafts November 1st, final drafts November 30th, and I think what we're doing is we're buying ourselves some time in December to do things in a more sane rather than rushed manner. So that's my second one. Third one, pretty simple one, complete a TA with a tentative agreement with the SEA or DPW employee union, resulting in voter approval and a contract for that union, the last one that's following. And fourth one, and we got into it a little bit tonight, both in terms of discussion of the fire department engineering design and whatever, and that objective is continue to improve the effectiveness of the procurement process with a goal of reducing costs and increasing transparency. I would like to be able to make a statement, I think the board hopefully agrees with this, that exceptions to contracts being awarded to an entity other than the lowest bidder or with three qualified bidders would always be approved by the selectmen in a public meeting. That's the transparency bit. So you know that everything is going to either the lowest bidder and there were three or more bidders. Otherwise, it would have been decided on Channel 22, and therefore there's nothing I don't want to say funny going on, but we're doing things in an efficient, open way. So those are my suggestions.
And for you, Phil, have you got some suggestions that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, and I thought they dovetail nicely into the presentations tonight by Fire and by Public Works, by perhaps the Warren articles with buildings again, the courthouse renovations. Over the horizon with school, we suddenly see the Hampton Junior High on Academy Ave is in play for some action, perhaps. No cost to the taxpayers, and I'm happy, and we'll seek Mark's input on this. But I think the time is well past where the town needs a building advisory group, and department heads aren't necessarily experts in building fire stations. Public Works directors aren't necessarily experts in building sewer plants. And we've got some extraordinary folks in this town that do this caliber of work, that do this engineering, that do this construction. And again, this text can be massaged. It would be to assist the town of Hampton, executive staff, department heads, town committees, individuals, and businesses in matters concerning building construction within the town of Hampton. And said group would be to perform on an appointed basis at no expense to the town and shall sunset 1 May 2015 unless extended by the Board of Selectmen. Similarly, technology. I think we're well past the time where we could really use some force multiplication for our technology group. And I think everyone's doing a good job. I think we can do better. And again, similarly, language to be flushed through the town attorney to assist the town of Hampton, executive staff, et cetera, with matters concerning technology within Hampton, the town of Hampton, and to serve again on an appointed basis at no expense to the town. And again, to sunset 3 years from now, 1 May 2015, unless extended by the board. And finally, there's a great intern program that goes on up at the high school and is a local business. We used that extensively when my children were high school age. Very, very capable kids. This is a great business platform. The town of Hampton does a great job offering municipal services. And I would encourage our board to work with the Winnicott School Board and implement a cooperative student intern program between the town of Hampton and the Winnicott High School. And that would commence in September of this year when the children come back to school, the students do, in accordance with the directives of both the SAU 21 School Board and the Hampton Board of Selectmen and town department heads. So those are kind of my the issues that I thought would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Where do we stand on the building advisory group that we were working on?
You have a permanent building committee, you enacted the ordinance.
And then it was put on the shelf.
You haven't appointed anybody, and
where it sat for 3 years.
Right.
Well, I might say that now is the time. And you heard it tonight. It would be perfect if the chief already had that advisory group, had run by the engineering, addressed the questions of bid price, it addresses the questions of capabilities, experience. This is what these people do. Grist Mill condominiums, Teleran, you look it up here on the north end of town, these hospitality platforms that just have opened up this week. Incredible stuff. And now's the time to staff that, along with technology and perhaps the intern program.
What is the hospitality?
Well, you've got Ron Jillian's Community Oven.
Yep.
And,
Gotcha.
in addition, they can help with code issues. There's a lot on the plate for these code enforcement personnel in this town. And with a strong business advisory or building advisory group, it takes a lot of pride. This is what you're going to need. We've done it. We've worked. And boom, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, how much response did we get from getting people to become members to the group?
Actually, we really didn't advertise it. So.
We just got to about that
We
point.
approved it, and I think that was the next step, and we put it on the shelf for now. We had some people express interest.
I think actually that it's starting coming back. I think we did advertise, and I think the reason it kind of ended up on the shelf is there wasn't
As much
a response
as
at all.
we
Yeah.
would like.
We had 2 or 3 people send letters in. They'd like to be involved. That was it.
I will tell you that Mr. Timothy McGrail from Teleran is keenly interested. John Callenrud from Meridian Builders, and I'm sure they're just the tip of the
Hey,
iceberg.
I'm all for it. I pushed for it before, and it just sort of faded away. So I think this is something that really we could take a look at, especially now that we're building something. I mean, that was part of the conversation that, you know, we're never building anything.
Right, exactly. As a matter of fact, that was another reason that kind of steered it in the direction of the shelf. There was nothing.
Mhm.
Why don't I just send it back out to everybody so everybody can refresh it?
How did this school group get their people to come in and help them work on their plans for the academy? Is anybody familiar with that committee?
Oh, I think they just had a walkthrough. I'm not sure if they've progressed
Yeah,
that very
it's
far.
not,
I thought they had a committee, though, Seth, because there was one that Mike Kloop was on and a few other people a few years ago where they decided to look at it. Remember
I
that?
think there was also, I believe there was a paid consultant involved at one point as well. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah,
but-
I think that was after the committee, though.
Yeah.
so if you want to distribute that information to the board, Mr. Welch, we can bring
Send
that
it
up.
out
I
tomorrow
think it's
morning.
a good point. Did you want to talk about your goals?
Yeah, only a couple things that I think would be really good for us to do, in my opinion. Starting off with a follow-up on the flat tax rate that Richard was talking about. I suggest we try to, when we're going to the budget season, we look at try to keep the budget for the 2013 as close to level as possible. Okay, that's number one. And number two, I like Phil's idea of the technology. I was on that kick before when Bill brought up the idea of everybody having laptops, and we sort of went through that little exercise. Now, I don't know if it'll work or not. Maybe iPads might work. I'm totally flexible on all this, but I do know one thing, okay? And this is, I'm going to do my own argument here real quick on point two about having this technology thing, is that I've been told that in Somersworth, the police car delivers the packet to the selectmen at the appropriate time. Well, I don't know if we need to do that. I think if we can do it all electronically, that big pile of stuff we have every week, it's an inch of paper, which has to be so many trees. I don't know how you figure that ratio out. I think we need to start moving over to a more electronic environment. And I'm an old person. If I can do it, you guys can do it, okay? I've been around a long time. Older than you, so there's no excuses except for accepted for age, okay? If you want to use some other excuse, that's fine. But either laptops or iPads, or you like your little, what's that little gizmo you have?
iPad?
You have an iPad? I thought you had a BlackBerry.
iPad.
Okay, an iPad. And you like that. Does that bring everything you need to see?
Most everything I need,
If it was there, you could see everything. I think we need to look at that a little closer. Not saying it's sellable or doable.
Oh, it absolutely is. And more than looking at our faces all the time on the television camera, you can have a presentation and flow through websites and communicate much more effectively.
Exactly, like if there's a piece of paper we're talking about, we're all looking at, you can put that right up on the screen. There's all kinds of things like you say, Phil. So I'm all for looking at technology, like Phil says. I'll just put technology down, and we'll fuss over the details later. And I had one more item, and that is looking ahead. I wanted to make sure that we try to get that last contract in if we can. So you guys are on that negotiating team. You have your work cut out for you to work hard to come to terms and get that all done. I have no problem with, I know you guys will do a good job there, so I won't say any more about that one. And there was only one other item that I was a little concerned about, and I know they're all in good hands, but I think the five of us have to sort of keep an eye on the big projects that are going on, the fire station, the pumping station, and the other things that are going on, especially sewage treatment plant, to make sure that there's no bumps there that we can possibly help ward off. So I'll just say ongoing major projects. How's that?
Okay, and Ben, would you like to give your suggestions?
Yes. Just coming back to Dick's real quick, the first draft of those articles, just to confirm with the BOS meeting. I think we could use November 5 and November 19. That would
Sure.
be perfect. No one mentioned the CIP, so I will mention that. I think I would like to see us encourage the planning board to bring as much of that to the public as possible, maybe using some of the off nights that we have in June as a way or day to communicate what's going on to the public. And
I'm not sure, but I do not believe there's a public hearing requirement on the CIP.
Most towns hold one, and it's adopted by the planning board following.
I don't think
a
we've
great
actually
idea.
been
Not
in the
required
habit.
by statute.
I think it's a great idea to have public hearing and get that input so that the public feels as if they've been involved in the process. But again, that can only be, if this board agrees, a recommendation to the planning board as to how to end up with a final product. I agree with the approach from both Mike and Richard regarding the budget. Actually, I guess I agree more with Mike's because I'm going to talk about the 2013 budget
Right.
situation and not necessarily the 2012. It's a different topic. And I would like us to, as soon as we can, adopt a budget resolution as to what we want the manager and the department heads to come back to us with for our review before we send it on to the budget committee. And whether it's flat, we have to define everything in terms of default budget because it's not going to be flat. It's got some increases that we know are going to be going up from actions taken by last town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So whether we define it in terms of a change to a default budget number that will be calculated sometime during the late summer, that the manager knows what we're expecting him to give us in the first crack. So flat plus 100,000, 1% would be $250,000. So we got to pick a number that says this is what we want. This is what we want that first round.
But
of budget.
what is your reference point again, Ben? Your reference point is to this year's budget, whatever it is, or to the default.
Well, the 1% being 250,000 was a very round number as far as what the budget, operating budget
But
is.
compared to 2012, or
I think the operating budget default number will go up at a minimum of around $400,000 just because of the CBAs that are already approved, the effect
Okay.
of the second year.
but on the other hand,
So it's really what we're talking about is the default number, whatever
Yeah.
that magic is.
But on the other hand, that's not an impact on tax effect spending because the 2012 tax rate is driven by the
See,
combination.
And I look at it differently, I'm prepared to work on both directions.
Right.
The rate to me is the rate. That's a mathematical calculation. I like to look at the hard dollars.
Mm.
So, and I think we can't necessarily give the manager as a goal a flat tax rate.
No, I don't mean tax
We don't know
rate.
what assessed values and whatnot are
right.
going to be.
The term I use, it wasn't tax rate. It's tax effect spending. Okay, and what tax effect spending is essentially the combination of operating budgets. Okay, coupled with the tax impact of warrant articles. Okay, and in some cases the tax impact is the entire warrant article. For example, the $250,000 or whatever it was on the Batchelder farm. Okay. In other cases, the tax impact may be 2 years down the road, and it's the first year of debt service on a 20-year.
On a pump station, whatever it might be.
Or whatever. But the thing that you've got when you start comparing 2013 with 2012, from a tax effect standpoint, you've got this much in the warrant article, okay? You've got this much in the operating budget, and then the warrant article merges into the operating budget, okay? And it's not going to drive those kind of increases in the next year because the first year of these warrant articles had bringing people all to the proper steps. Second year was only 1% increases typically.
I think I looked at it that way.
Yeah,
I think this
okay.
is the second. This is the 2013 impact of the CBAs is
Yeah.
388,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think. I think I did that math right. I could be wrong, but that's not. I mean, that's not important to the goal that we give the manager. The default budget can be described as a narrative. It doesn't have to be a number right now. We don't want to go through that calculation right now.
Maybe one suggestion.
But we should say whether it's going to be exactly the default budget, or whether it should be $100,000 less than the default budget, or whether it should be $250,000 more than the default budget. We need to give him what the goal is.
A goal.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking is maybe in terms of how we express that goal, to your
Yeah.
point, a little bit of dialogue in that next week when Mike Swotzer is in here anyway.
Okay.
Because I'm sure Mike would have some,
I think it's probably the sooner we give the manager, if we wish to have that as one of our goals,
Yep.
the sooner we give that
Better.
the manager that number, the easier he can go then about the process of creating the budget.
Right.
So that was one. That was actually two, because I mentioned the CIP in the process there. Two was the budget resolution. Three, and it's something I did mention, nobody picked up on, but I did mention it in the press, that I would like to have a public information process about the forms of government that are available to towns in New Hampshire. It's at no cost to the town. We can do it in Winnicott Auditorium. We could do it at one of the cafeterias at the schools within SAU 90. People from the LGC, perhaps on after I made my comment earlier, but people from the LGC might come down and lead it for us. And it just be a public input, be a public information session that they could, those experts and perhaps others that we could solicit, could tell the town people who are interested in knowing what the forms of government are that are available to us, and
Like
if there's enough
chartering
interest, that could lead to a charter commission. I think actually I would like to see the law changed on charter commissions before we go about doing one, because it's very, very difficult and convoluted and requires multiple steps along the way. But that would be something that the LGC will not support it coming from an individual requesting it. It has to be from a governmental body requesting it.
Sure.
Because they're serving municipalities. So that would be that would be my last goal.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Would you be advocating for a change?
I'm seeking information.
Oh.
I really am. I mean, there's so many options that you have. The goal has got to be to increase public understanding of what happens in their government, I think.
Participation?
Participation would be great, and I wonder if the length of the warrant articles, and some of the times we have to put ordinances, and it's happened for the last probably it's happened for a longer period of time than that. We have these 3 pages of ballot information that's regarding an ordinance. We need it. We need to have that to govern the town. But I'm not sure if many people in town really
read the whole thing.
Want to know.
Read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think they want to elect people who govern, and in some instances, I think they want to control spending, as an example. That makes a lot of sense to me. And there might be a lot of things that people want to control, but I think if we can get that ballot down to a page, I think it might increase participation.
That leads to another question. We were pursuing getting some of those warrants shortened, right? Some of our discussions in previous times. What did we decide about that?
There is legislation pending in Concord to, in fact, do that. You know, the process you use now for adopting zoning.
Yeah.
There is a short narrative that describes what the zoning amendment is about, and that's what's printed on the ballot. You don't get one of these things that's 5 and 6 pages long, which is really what's going to go in the ordinance if it's adopted. You have a short paragraph that's maybe 2 sentences. There's a bill pending in Concord that would do that for ordinances to be adopted by town meetings, where you would have a short narrative describing it. And then you would have to post the entire ordinance at the town meeting. You'd have to post the entire ordinance with the town clerk and the selectman's office, and anybody could view it.
And also, we eliminated 2 warrant articles this last round. The Budget Committee tossed a couple in, the horses and the mosquitoes. So I guess what I'm saying is we're making progress in getting the ballot shorter. Not maybe as short as we want it, as quick as we want it, but I think it's going in a good direction.
2000.
The worst thing that you can sit through, and you've done it now for many years, and I've done it for more years than I choose to admit. Rick's done it for a long time, is to sit through that deliberative session.
I mean, it's, it's, you almost want to take the tablets and dissolve them under your tongue. So I think it would be nice, even if we go back to traditional town meeting. Then at least we'd be sitting there at the town meeting, or what's now the deliberative session, and we know that when we vote on something, it's over. It's done.
But either way, what you're saying is, as a starter, you're not advocating anything other than let's understand what our options
are. I'd like to know a lot more about it than I do now too.
Right.
So some of the things that I was going to suggest, almost everything that I was planning on suggesting has already been mentioned.
That's the benefit of going last.
Yeah. Which is fine with me. But one of the things that I didn't really hear it mentioned, at least in this way, is I'd like to see a better understanding of the town and the state and how the agreements that we have. And I think this is certainly a year that we can do that. The other one that on my list that wasn't mentioned, but it fits in with the technology committee or whatever, is I'd like to see that, even though it's very nice the way that it is now, but if we could only revamp our town webpage in some way, make some improvements, maybe do something that might attract more hits from business and things like that. It's been brought up a lot of different ways during the meetings over the last year, that there are things where we could definitely have a stronger web page. So that's something that maybe if we did have some type of a technology committee or whatever, that could be one of the focal points. So basically, recapping here.
Can I comment on that one?
Yeah.
First of all, I think the technology committee, with input from other people beyond the scope of selectmen and whatever, I think is a real good idea. To the issue of the website, I did have a discussion with a combination of Mike Swotzer and Paul on the issue of the website. Paul is already doing some work in terms of what he can do to improve the website, even in the environment that we're currently in, which is a IIS environment running under Server 2008 or whatever. In other words, current technology that we're using. Not a big deal, but there's an opportunity to make improvements. What he's also doing is investigating other platforms. For example, if you go to I went around to 8 or 10 different municipal sites in New Hampshire, and the first 4 or 5, Concord, Portsmouth, Nashua, Manchester, kind of like ours, just very busy on the front page and hard to find things. But when I went to Keene, I was very pleasantly surprised in terms of both the layout of the website as well as the ability to find things. One of the things they had on there is a very effective search engine, literally up in the same class of technology as Google. One of the things I did in Keene was I went in and I found 4 or 5 bits of information by just digging down 3 and 4 levels into the website. Then I went back to the search engine and said, let me see if I can find that. Okay? And I did within 30 seconds, 45 seconds, or whatever. So what Paul is also doing is he's working with Carla, the technology person in the school system. They're kind of combining their efforts there to see what alternatives might work in terms of something that's a little more powerful. And he's kind of, what he and I discussed, he's kind of targeted coming into us maybe sometime early May or whatever, just with, here's what I looked into and here's what I found. No decision, to make or whatever, but I just kind of hinted a little, and he just took the ball and
I was also going to suggest about looking at the school web page. I mean, I've heard it mentioned from several people that they thought that they've done a pretty nice job over there.
Mr. Chairman, before you go on, Paul's already got a web page already set up,
Yep.
so like a trial one, and I can share that that web address with you folks, and you can all. It's just one he put out there. What I like about it, it isn't so much that it's different, which it is. He's brought in some colors to sort of make it stand out a little differently.
I'd love to see that.
I mean, and the bad thing about it is it has all of our ugly pictures on it. I mean, all of our handsome pictures on it. My ugly picture, all of you handsome on it. And I told him that has to go. But anyway.
I insist that goes.
Especially that ugly one by Mike Pierce. But I'll forward it all to you guys.
So, and another, something that I would like to see a better working together of the different boards that we have. And one thing that I wanted to mention, like I was watching the Budget Committee, and they were talking about the CIP and this and that. I think it's important for us all to remember that, like, the CIP is under the control of the Planning Board. I mean, there was even someone on the Budget Committee that mentioned that the reason they ran for the Budget Committee was to be on the CIP. And I think that we really have to take a look at, we don't want to do other boards' work. I mean, it's not really fair to. They should be doing what they have to do, and we're doing what we have to do, and but yet we can all still work together. So going back to pretty much just to go over our basic goals, the main one seems to be the flat tax rate or budget resolution, whatever. Everyone seems to be quite concerned about the warrant articles, and that's something that's been a lot of talk, so I think we have a definite consensus there. Certainly, the procurement process for the fire station and the improvements that need to be done at DPW, I think that's going to be a top priority. There's some interest of the courthouse that's been mentioned here tonight, and also the school. And the technology committee or commission or whatever, or people that we want to get together for something like that, I think that sounds like that would be something really good and probably long overdue. The CIP certainly is something that's very important, and I think that we really have to define our building group or of professionals, and I think we'll all be looking forward to taking a look what Fred's already done on that. And I think it's a good point that Ben made about the government charter provisions or whatever, or how we can look at that. I think that a lot of people, there might be a lot of questions answered there. So that's something that definitely has a lot of benefits. So, and other comments about that?
I would make a request. I think we've got probably a list of items that's probably longer than we want to end up for objectives. I mean, typically in this kind of environment.
Right now.
But what I'm thinking is maybe we can ask Christina or whatever to look at this portion of the meeting and create the list, whatever it is, 12 or 14 or whatever, distribute that to us, and then maybe next time we come back together we can look at that and say, yeah, we definitely want to do this one. And in some cases, we may say that's not one of our objectives, but it's something we want to do.
We might just knock off some of them sooner,
Right. I think two. One is the building committee is already in place. The skeleton, you add the muscle to that. The technology group, I'm fully prepared by the end of the month to make that motion after we run it by Fred. So there's two off the table. And I think your point's well taken. We condensed that. Great ideas and great input tonight.
But
Yeah.
can we get a list of Christina
Yeah, I
to put
think that
together
you're
a
going
list
to
of
find
the
it's
whole?
around 11 or 12 right now.
Yeah.
And so if we can do that and maybe condense it, I think last year we tried to have it around 6.
We've done it for 3 years now, and it's always been 6 or 7. I think maximum 8, which kind of.
So that will work out well. So any other new business
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
tonight? Okay, moving on to the town manager's report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll try not to recycle you, but certainly the biggest topic of discussion since Friday has been the State Department of Transportation's intention to eliminate streetlights. And Friday, I received a call from the Newburyport News asking for a statement on the fact that the state DOT is shutting down streetlights in Hampton, 21 of them to be exact, along Ocean Boulevard. I haven't been able to confirm that they're along Ocean Boulevard. I have been able to confirm they're shutting off streetlights. Where they are, no one knows currently. There is no date of termination given for those shutoffs. I certainly notified not only the board, but our state senator and our state representatives. I also notified the chair of the Hampton Beach Area Commission, and I also notified the Beach Precinct, along with about everybody else under the sun that I could lay my hands on in Concord. And I had a number of different observations made to me, and I don't know what's true and what is not true. What I can tell you is that I have verified that this is something that's going to affect all 243 municipalities in the state of New Hampshire, and none of them have been notified by state DOT at this point. DOT notified the utility companies to sever these services and these lights. And what I received today, thanks to Senator Stiles, I got some of this information today. As far as the budget is concerned, the reduction for utilities in the state budget came all the way through the process. It was initiated by Governor Lynch in his budget, passed the House and the Senate budgets untouched, and came through the Committee on Conference. What I can tell you is that represented approximately a 50% decrease in the DOT account that includes street lighting. In April, DOT transferred $665,000 into the 023 heat, electricity, and water account because they were supposed to implement the reduction in street lighting at the beginning of the fiscal year, but ran into problems with the various electric companies. They did not, in fact, do that and have not yet done it. The best information we have currently is DOT's September 22nd, 2011 report to the Fiscal Committee, which explained that in their need to reduce expenses to stay within their budget, it would impact the following. Drainage, 80% reduction in maintenance of all drain systems. Roadside sweeping, 80% reduction in that activity. Mowing, state DOT property, a 75% reduction. Tree trimming, a 65% reduction. Shoulder construction, a 90% reduction. Street lights, the program will be reduced by 85% in fiscal year 2012 to meet the Class 23 utility cost budget. This will result in the discontinuance of nearly all street lights in the state highway system, with the exception of the minimum required at interstate ramp locations. The utility cost reduction was required by the governor to eliminate 25% of costs on renewable sources. She did talk to the Senator did talk to the commissioner today about our concerns in Hampton and certainly other towns in her district, particularly with regards to the Hampton River Bridge and both sides of its approaches. Also Ocean Boulevard, where the state receives thousands of visitors. What the commissioner said was that he was having an overdraft in lighting in the state, and he too was concerned about the new project. This reduction in street lighting is a statewide project. He will look carefully at where in the state the measures could impact the least amount of people and provide the safety needed for both automotive, citizens, and state facilities. And he apologized for not notifying the boards of selectmen and town managers in the state. That's kind of where we are. It's not as simple, having spent 20 years in this business, it's not as simple as just going to the top of the street light and taking the eye out, which is what controls the operation of the street light. To do that, you're removing the waterproof setting at the top of the street light. So, and there's no way to shut it off because they're active all the time on hot wire. The thing that controls it is the eye that either turns it on or shuts it off, according to daylight provisions. So you end up having to take the entire street light down. Now, for aluminum poles, that usually means they have to take the whole pole down. So we're talking an awful lot of effort and an awful lot of money. I have no idea how they're going to handle that. What I can tell you is that I met with Channel 4 News this afternoon, and they told me that the state very courteously suggested that the towns, if they didn't really like this idea, could pick up the cost themselves and take care of all the lights themselves around the state. And I suggested that probably was some act of an unfunded mandate to me, but that's kind of their position currently. Hopefully we'll have more information as the week goes along, and hopefully they will in fact send us a letter telling us exactly what's going to happen. Where they say 21 street lights, and now this latest piece of information I got from the state and the senator was that ultimately, at the end of the 2012 fiscal year, all but those on interstate ramps are going to be discontinued across the whole state. A significantly higher number than 21 streetlights in Hampton. So there was some question about whether or not they're going to do the 101 Route 1 interchange, and some of the lights are going to be there. But just coming down one side this afternoon, I counted 15 lights. So, and I know there's a whole list of lights. All the lights on the bridge coming over the river are going to be turned off. Makes for a dangerous situation. So that's the best information I have at this point in time. As I get additional information, I'll certainly let all of you know, so we know where we are. I've been contacted by the Hampton School District, SAU 90. They have received an order from state DES on the Bachelor Pond Dam. There are a number of projects that need to be done there. Actually, the dam face itself is mostly removing heavy brush and some small trees. As you will probably remember from previous discussions about dams, we had to remove trees off our dam down at the mill pond simply because they cause piping in the system. In this case, the system is the roadbed, Toll Farm Road. The other issue that they have is that the outfall of the culvert that runs under Toll Farm Road at normal flow, without flood, is almost full. So I've asked the Department of Public Works for their engineer to take a look at this to determine what should be done. A report from schools. We're trying to give them a hand in doing that, and how that should be addressed, so that we can try to put some actual fingers on the piece of paper that will address the issue down at that location. And it's certainly something the town is going to have to work with the school on.
I have a question about the lights before we get too far
Yes,
along.
sir.
If we decide, the state decides to save money, which one could argue that's probably a good thing to save money, and I won't get into that part of it, and maybe even good for the environment because they're going to shut down on some of the power they consume by shutting them off. So one could probably make that argument too. But if we decide to shut them off in some really high areas of traffic or areas that we have safety concerns about in Hampton, they just decide to shut them off anyway. Is there some way that we can take care of that from our point of view without going through all this rewiring of the lamppost?
So far, nothing's been shut off. We don't know when they're going to do it or if they're going to actually do it.
Right.
There's already an effort underway to try to add money to a special appropriation bill in Concord before the legislature adjourns to try to undo what they've done, at least with regards to lighting.
Mm-hmm.
I did ask the general question, and I got an answer back that the average lights that they're talking about run from $28 to $38 a month. That's not including any potential rate increases that may come along.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those lights are much more expensive than that because of the size of the bulb and the number of lumens burned on a monthly basis on an average day. I've asked to have someone, as soon as we can identify the lights they're going to shut off, give me a cost and what it would be to keep those on, so that I can give that to the board so you have that information. We'd also, of course, like to see where those locations are because that has a consideration in this as well. We don't know either of those factors currently.
Well, but I mean, you mentioned it. Basically, I have to take the light pole down to disconnect it or shut it off, and if we deem it to be necessary for
Actually do it.
right.
There's already an effort underway to try to add money to a special appropriation bill in Concord before the legislature adjourns to try to undo what they've done, at least with regards to lighting.
Mm-hmm.
I did ask the general question, and I got an answer back that the average lights that they're talking about run from $28 to $38 a month. That's not including any potential rate increases that may come along.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those lights are much more expensive than that because of the size of the bulb and the number of lumens burned on a monthly basis on an average day. I've asked to have someone, as soon as we can identify the lights they're going to shut off, give me a cost and what it would be to keep those on, so that I can give that to the board so you have that information. We'd also, of course, like to see where those locations are, because that has a consideration as well. We don't know either of those factors currently.
Well, but I mean, you mentioned it. Basically, I have to take the light pole down to disconnect it or shut it off. And if we deem it to be necessary for our own safety, and we decide it's our best interest to have it on, we might want to be involved with that process, that we can have it turned back on at our convenience, or maybe an off-on switch at the bottom of the pole.
I don't think we have all this information yet.
I know. So it's going to take a while to get this all put
We
together.
are looking for the information because it's critical to us, I think, to have it.
Yeah,
As far as the aluminum poles are concerned,
yeah.
it's not an easy matter to disconnect those and take them down. You're talking live wiring here, and somebody's got to make that safe. They're not going to leave them up unless, in fact, because they get paid rental on those.
Okay.
They're not going to leave them up if the light is shut off, and that's another issue.
Mm-hmm.
They are extremely expensive,
Okay.
and they're very costly to keep up there. This is a 20-year amortization problem, so I have no idea where the amortization is going to get paid from if it hasn't been there for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole series of factors here that come to play that we're not privy to.
Okay.
Can I make a couple of comments? One is I saw something, I don't know if I got it from you or not, Fred, but where the DOT spokesman, I believe his name is Bill Boynton,
Yes.
was quoted as saying if the towns, wish to, fund this under, from their own finances or whatever, that's something that could be accomplished.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one statement. Number two, Fred's numbers of whatever, $38 a month, just to, that's, call it, in round numbers, $500 a year a light. At this point, we're talking 21 lights. We don't know what it's migrating to. 21 lights, $500 is $10,000 a year. I can tell you last year, our streetlight budget was $200,000, and we actually only spent $160,000 of that $200,000 last year, for what it's worth. So, to the, I don't like the idea, and I bet Phil doesn't either, of taking on, state's responsibility, funding those lights.
Yeah.
But if that's as far as it goes, is 21, and it's critical locations like along Ocean Boulevard. It's not some monster number or whatever.
Yeah, but one has
I
to
guess
get
that-
angry at the end of the day.
So that's what I was.
When there are people in Concord saying we've done such a wonderful job of reducing the state's budget.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
These are the same people that said pension plan funding was going to be a savings initially, and then it was going to be flat based on some of the savings. And what ultimately ended up, if you believe in the Hampshire Center for Public Policy Studies, is that the state reduced their budget in the pension area by $40 million and added $55 million to the collective municipalities. So, yeah, do I sound a little angry there?
The state did a good deal on that one, and frankly, what bothers me is this statement that by the end of fiscal year 2012, the only lights that'll be on that are owned by the state are the ones on the interstate ramps. And there are hundreds of lights that we're talking about if that's the case. I mean, we could be doubling our budget.
Yeah, and there are many towns around that don't use that many streetlights to begin with, like Rye and Northampton, and Hampton's always been a big supporter of a good streetlight system. So
We're also dealing with two agencies here, because I think the lights, at least for the rebuilt section of the beach is, that are on that side are DRED. And if this executive order goes through and applies to all departments, those may all be shut off.
They've already had graffiti down there already.
I know.
And they had a hard time getting it cleaned up. They couldn't decide who to pay or have do it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is a showstopper, and this highlights our relationship and our responsibilities as the Select Board in further developing this relationship with the state. The state isn't doing this because they want to. The state is at crunch time, and they're crunching numbers, and it's not easy. And it's not easy being up near the flagpole in Concord. It's a $5 billion budget. It's the largest employer in the state. It has the largest number of employees, and I think they do a good job. And what we have to do, and when we ask our department heads for metrics, and we examine these types of costs, we have to lean forward. Keith, the Public Works Director, needs to work with Fred. We need to fix the costs on this, assure the voters for public safety, for our beach owners, for our individuals and businesses that conduct commerce, for safety of our children, the people that walk this beach, that the lights are going to stay on. But it does underscore the heavy lifting that this board has to do, and our committees in educating the state, and just what a special job we do as ambassadors and stewards of the natural environment that's down here with the state. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that Fred has worked pretty hard on this already, and I know that Nancy Stiles has, and everybody's been quite interested in it. Any other comments?
Let me finish up, Mr. Chairman. The Municipal Association has requested through Town Council to the board that they would like the board to contact our state representatives with regards to House Bill 212, excuse me, Senate Bill 212. That is an amendment to a bill that was placed before the Senate. It has been amended. It's now in front of the House of Representatives. It deals with the current situation with the local government center and their insurance and their payments and the funds that are involved with that. I bring it to your attention because I was asked to bring it to your attention. And that came through Town Council directly from the Municipal Association. I'm going to leave it there. I've given you some draft warrant articles for 2013.
I do have comments on that. Should I wait?
Oh, no.
Mr. Chair?
Go
Sure.
right
In
ahead.
examining that, and we did speak with Keith, Public Works, on that memorandum of agreement with DRED, and we get these issues, it seems, at the last moment. The email trail on these are April 6th, in reviewing the documents from Marilise O'Connor, April 5th. Here it is, the 9th. We've had Easter weekend, and we're asked for final input. I would imagine this material has been on the street for a while. My input would be on page 3 of 4 on confidentiality. I would agree with the firefighters that we want full transparency on this issue. Marilise O'Connor states in that second paragraph on page 3 of 4 that from the risk pool perspective, and it is not insurance, it's not subject to the state of New Hampshire, there is at least one critical difference between the operations of a risk pool in local government. Risk pools are engaged in a competitive business operation. Local government is not in a competitive business environment. I would substantially disagree with that notion on that, and that would be a comment that perhaps the board would want to embrace as well. Again, the firefighters have issue with some transparency. And further, I just got this, and like you, had the holiday weekend. I'm looking at a page here, and it's page 6. Be governed by a board of the majority, which is composed of elected or appointed public officials, officers, or employees. I would certainly entertain the notion that some of the fine people that serve on boards or elected from this town, with the weight we carry financially, have some position on that. Page 7, line 13, paragraph E, submit to the financial accountings as they may be reasonably requested by a member political subdivision, which shall pay for such an accounting. So it would seem that if we're not satisfied with the transparency, that we would have to pay for accounting for that. I disagree with that. Perhaps the board does as well. Page 8, paragraph 4, each pooled risk management program shall conduct an annual meeting to elect board members. In addition, each pool risk management program shall conduct 2 public hearings at least 10 days prior to rate setting. 10 days prior to rate setting is just not adequate notice to those that are in the pool. Perhaps the board would agree with that. Perhaps Fred would. Notice of the annual meeting and 2 public hearings shall be provided to the members of the pool risk management program and to the public by means of a prominent posting on the website. I think with our skin in the game, with our contributions to the pension system, we would like board membership on that. And finally, gentlemen, the methodology for this program, or this venture, if you will, on page 10, The Insurance Department, for similar reasons, the department states that it's unable to determine if this bill would impact county or local expenditures, as it does not know if this bill would impact the cost of providing benefits or the cost of covering other contingent risks. So there's a whole series of issues. We get these late in the game, and we really don't have adequate input to our legislative body. Thank you, sir.
Dick, did you have comments?
Yeah, it's interesting. A few of the early points that Phil picked up on, I picked up on the same things. I'm in complete agreement. The issue of disclosure and the critical difference between the operations of risk pool and law. I'm not buying it. I don't see how disclosing that is going to hurt our rates or, from a competitive standpoint or whatever. They're complaining, about accounting for monies on an individual pool member basis. In other words, town by town or whatever. I don't think that that's a bad thing. That you understand of that $100 million, how much applies to Hampton. And then on that same page they're complaining about having to get the particular forms within 60 days of an annual filing or whatever. And I mean, geez, in order to get a tax rate set, we've got to get MS1s and MS4s and so on.
50,000 other things.
So far, yeah. So, to be honest with you, Phil, I didn't read the whole bill like you did, but in terms of the points that LGC made, I'm not real sensitive to.
Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm just going to make it real quick. When I read through this, I thought that it looks like we're getting asked to support something. And when I perused through it, not with the depth that you two gentlemen did, but I did peruse it, I came to the conclusion that this is an effort by somebody to help cover up the LGC's situation they currently have, explaining where the money goes. I'm not going to go any further than that.
Okay. Did you want to comment, Ben?
Nope. I think the LGC is going to have to be on its own on this one, from my viewpoint.
Well, in fact, that's been the board's position right along until the Secretary of State finishes the analysis and investigation. This board voted not to take any position to support anything until we knew the facts.
And the part that sort of gets me is the Municipal Association requested through Town Council our support of Senate Bill 212. I feel similar to the way that Dick and Phil talked on this side of the table. I just think this is something that we don't necessarily need to be.
Well, it's probable that in the legislative bulletins that we get weekly, that sometime before I was back on the board, sometime many months ago, SB 212 was mentioned in the legislative bulletin that said this is what's happening. But we got lots to read around here. So.
We do.
Okay. Did you want to finish your report, Mr.
Thank you,
Welch?
Mr. Chairman. I've given the board some draft warrant articles. We're still working on final language. The 2013 town meeting, they're for your review and concept. We are working on additional ones, and they're in council's hands at the moment for a final draft with changes. And as soon as they're available, we're going to issue them out to the board.
I have a question for you. I perused them and I said, somebody's considering spending a chunk of change on the old courthouse. And I was thinking to myself, I was back a month or two ago, I said, I think I'm going to propose to this board that we figure out a way to just sort of get rid of it, just open and have it presented to the public that if you don't step forward with an idea like the Historical Society or one of those wonderful people, groups that doesn't step forward, same thing that happened at the old town hall. Lawn and beautiful grass.
We're trying to open the subject up for discussion, and we have some fairly reliable costs either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the board needs to analyze those and reach some decisions on what they would like to do. So we put the draft warrant articles out there so that you can begin that process.
Very good. Thank you, Craig, for that.
If we want to start that off, I'm just looking at the calendar. May the 7th.
Sir.
Well, I'm talking, I guess, to everybody.
All for it.
There's no department head right now on the meeting schedule, so it might get slammed with something else, but that might be a day to
talk about
so that
court?
the community knows that we're going to be talking about
the court.
the court.
You're saying as opposed to warrant articles in general, this specific issue?
Well,
right
yeah,
here.
Mike brought it up. I mean, there's two that are in Fred's package. One is the idea of refurbishing it, and one is the idea of knocking it down. And I think it's time. I mean, you know, I'm not sure if anything's going to happen 10 years from now when the building has deteriorated 10 more years that's going to save it. So if it's not saved now, maybe we get it behind us.
Good idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you want to continue, Mr. Walsh?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's two more things. One that United States Representative Frank Ginta is going to have an office staff member here in the town hall on Thursday, April 26th at 2:30 p.m. to take in constituents' concerns. And United States Senator Kelly Ayotte is also scheduled to have a representative present here on April 16th. That's it, sir.
Any other questions for the town manager? Moving on to old business.
Yeah, I do. I just want to comment on warrant articles beyond the scope of the two related to the old courthouse. I think in terms of the fire department capital reserve one, I think I'd like to see what the chiefs put together on the CIP type stuff and see how the 157, ties into that. And on DPW roads, I think we need, earlier on than last year, but a similar plan that shows whether it's, drainage, sewer, the paving itself, whatever, what the plan is and where the money's going before we arrive at, whatever the number is, 300,000 or
He's supposed to give that to me within the week.
whatever. One other issue that I want to bring up in the context of Fred's report, because I think he may know more than I know or we know, is what's going on in Concord with the Concord Co-op and the recycling. My understanding is while that was approved, that's where our single stream cycling is intended to go,
right?
Down the road and whatever. My understanding is that while the board of directors of the co-op approved going forward with that several months ago, whatever,
They did.
the Concord City Council, who represents 30 to 40% of the co-op, has basically said, well, we're not sure we want to go forward with this, and if they don't go forward with it, it's questionable whether it will go forward. My understanding is that this is on the agenda tonight for the Concord City Council, so we hopefully will know more next week. But if for some reason this doesn't go forward, then we kind of have to shift gears in terms of where is that single stream recycling going to go on a long-term basis. Right now it's going to Casella in Charlestown, and that's not really a good economic long-term solution for the town based on, I don't believe they're paying anything to us.
That's $25 a ton right now.
Right, which is almost nothing.
It's nothing.
So.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Fred, other than...
No, we're waiting for the city council as well. I mean, we were told last week that the city council was going to meet tonight. They were going to address the issue of apparently their portion of the co-op has gone up to about 41.5%, 42%, and they're not willing to go with that. They think that's too high should the co-op go under. I can't quite understand how they go under because they've got cash for the entire thing, even though they're going to borrow for constructing, which doesn't make any sense to me, but that's what they're going to do. The city council preliminarily had indicated they wanted the co-op to go out and get at least one more city, either Nashua or Manchester, to deposit in the facility. Failing that, they may in fact hold the entire process up indefinitely, or may back out of the process, one of the two.
Well, how many towns are involved with it right now?
There's over 20.
Over 20 that more or less agreed to participate.
That's correct.
Right, but there's, I think...
Not including the members of the co-op. There's 20 other towns.
There's kind of, we're basically an associate member, where we're not on the hook at all,
Correct.
For any sort of capital expenditures or anything that goes south or whatever. And then I don't know what they call them. There's, the founding members.
They're the actual members of the co-op.
Right,
So the 20
which includes Concord and whatever, who are the ones that are on the hook. Just so everybody knows from Hampton's perspective. One, we're not on the hook, even though we've agreed as an associate member, we're not on the hook in terms of anything that, runs into problems with this, number one. Number two, if this, because of the commodity value of single-stream recyclables, hits the point where our recyclables going to Concord become a cost as opposed to a revenue source, then we immediately have the option to get out of that co-op if we wish to. So we're in a pretty low-risk situation, but we do have a long-term problem if they don't go forward.
How many towns does it take and cities does it take to make it operational?
Concord has a 41% share because of the size of their material that's being deposited. They'd like to have the city of Manchester or the city of Nashua to come in. Nashua is going someplace else.
Okay.
So is Manchester, for that matter of fact. And they haven't been able to attract them. In lieu of that, they want some other large cities to come in, like Portsmouth or whatever.
But it is viable at the level they've got it in
Yes,
terms
it is.
of the flow of tonnage versus the capital investment. The problem is they don't like being on the hook for 40 or 42%.
Oh, so there's enough people.
If we put that shoe on our foot, probably we'd be talking about the same problem.
Probably, yeah.
So there's enough towns and cities, enough trash and recyclables to make it work. If they
Yes.
just decide to go
In
ahead,
fact, it may be slightly oversubscribed.
really.
Yes.
So the only problem we have is Concord then,
Concord's the
now.
only problem.
right now.
So do we expect to have a lot more information by next week?
I'm expecting to have more information by tomorrow, after the council meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Maybe we can put that on the agenda.
Oh, it'll definitely come up. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
Any other questions for Mr. Welch?
I noticed that, yes, I have one quick one. I noticed that got something from the Department of Environmental Services in the box too that talks about the Coffin Dam. Which one's the Coffin Dam?
It's the same as the Batchelder.
Point
It's Batchelder Park.
Oh,
Batchelder Pond.
okay.
It's actually not the Coffin Dam, but that's okay. They pulled something off something in Sugar Hill, I think, which is named the Coffin Dam, and it was a transposition. So
Okay.
But it is Coffin Pond.
it's also known as Bachelor Pond, but yeah, it's both.
Because
It's been
when I
talked
saw
about
that and
both.
I saw what you saw, I went on the CAI system and
It's addressed as both.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
But
I
there's
heard-
also a place in Sugar Hill, I believe it is, that has a Coffin Dam and a Coffin Pond. So
Thank
may
you.
have been some conflict there because what they're describing didn't meet the criteria. So
Moving on to old business, we have Hampton Service Pens.
my members of the board, I think I'll lead off with something that's not here, and that is just remind everybody dog registrations are due by April 30th. Hopefully everybody will come in and have a friendly meeting with the town clerk and pay that fee and get that over with. A bid was awarded to Professional Profiles for mowing for 2012, a single-year proposal in the amount of $13,600. There were 4 bidders, with Professional Proposal being the low bidder. And there was quite a bit of difference. The next one was $16,000, and it went up to $30,000 beyond that.
Oh, my God.
It was
13 to 30.
13 to 30. It's a wide spread. The federal state program for the turn-in of unused and expired medications will be conducted on Saturday, April 28th at the Hampton Police Station from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. No questions asked. Bring your expired and unused medications down there, and they will be taken. The Department of Public Works requests permission to purchase from IT Industries at a cost of $22,944 as a sole source supplier the necessary replacement of mixers for the wastewater treatment plant aeration system. They're the only ones that make this mixer that will fit the existing tanks. Without it, we would have to modify the tanks. They're concrete tanks.
I would make that motion.
We'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Can we have a little discussion about that? Is this a negotiated price, or did they bid on it, or what?
No, there's no bid. That's what the price. That's what the cost is for the mixers. They're
Are the only ones that make it?
They are the only ones that make the mixers that fit this particular station.
In other words, they got us where they want us.
That was the comment I made too when it came to me. They've got us where they want us, literally.
That's why you bid OEM contracts at break even, because you make it up in spares.
Yeah.
And presumably the cost of retrofitting is such that it's not even worth looking into.
We'd actually have to drain the aeration tanks, and we'd have to either fill the existing aeration holes in and drill new ones for whatever size we decide to buy, which could be a sole source supplier later on too, and have to replumb everything and rewire everything.
Does this amount replace all of them, or is this just some of them where there's multiple?
This replaces, I believe it replaces all of them. Let's see. It replaces, yes, there's one for each tank. There's 4. They're also submersible mixers. Custom design for the mounting existing framework.
I guess I'll have to vote in favor of doing it.
All
We don't have
those
any
in
choice,
favor?
do we?
Unanimous.
I'd like to think we had a choice, but I tried that too, so.
Mm.
The Department of Public Works has requested to again participate with the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department in loading lobster traps at the State Pier on Saturday, May 12th. This is an unpaid assistance that has been carried out for the past 15 years. This is how we dispose of our lobster traps at no cost. And of course, the State Dread participates in this as well.
Could you expand on that, please, sir, when you talk about the costs and who's
Traps
paying?
are picked up during the year on our beach and on the state beaches, our beaches and the state beaches. They're stored. And what happens in the spring is Fish and Game provides a very, very large dumpster. And they put it at the State Pier, and everybody brings the state and the town bring their traps there and load them. The state doesn't have a loader. So we've used our loader for the last 15 years to load the material into the dumpster.
Okay. And is that being conducted in accordance with the memorandum of agreement?
Actually, yes. We accept the lobster traps from Dread and store them along with ours, and this is where they're disposed of.
Okay. And I hate to jump on it, but it just in reviewing the syllabus for tonight and then looking at a memorandum of understanding, I think it says that we'll be reimbursed by the state for any participation we have in that.
If it costs us anything.
Right. Well, if we're putting a loader down here, someone's driving it, it's going to cost us some money, right?
Yep.
And it says specifically, and we can respond via email, but number 3 is specifically on lobster trap disposal, B, state responsibilities, and it does say we will be reimbursed. So if we could make a full accounting for that and send that bill.
They won't pay it. If the idea was if we had to dispose of them, if we had to pay to get rid of them, they would reimburse us. But the state is actually picking them up. Otherwise, we would have to take them to a landfill and have them tipped at our expense, which is $80-something a ton.
But these are traps that came off some combination of state and
Both.
town beaches,
Both,
right?
both
Yeah,
facilities.
it says specifically the state shall pay the town whenever the town is forced to expend for the receipt or disposal of such traps, in which case the town will issue billings to the state for reimbursement of such funds expended by the town. That's
we're not paying to get rid of them at all. The state's actually, they're going to truck them off and get rid of them for us.
for the receipt and disposal. If we have, and I don't want to belabor it, but it just seems to me there's an agreement. It would seem to me that rolling stock and an operator costs the town money.
I can bill them.
And the agreement does state that.
That's not a signed agreement yet, is it?
No.
No.
But the thing of it is, back to Phil's point, if we provide a loader and a person to do it, but they provide the truck to haul it to the landfill, and we don't pay for that, there might be a little bit of a wash there. We'd have to look at the whole picture.
How do the traps get from the landfill down to the pier? Does
Both
the state,
of us truck it.
so we're also incurring that charge in addition to the lawyer?
No, they're going to pay for taking them away, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I was watching a TV show, Windows on the Wild, from
Oh, yes. Very good program.
Yeah. and they had David Goffel, the
From Hampton.
our conservation girl's husband,
Mm.
and he was bringing in the fish, and 2 days in a row he had nothing but lobster traps. You know, fish too, but the lobster traps really caused him a problem. So I
You
assume,
caught up in the nets.
yeah, you could
Yeah.
see he was out at the Isles of Shoal, so they probably bring him from there and bring him to Hampton.
If they come in with the fishing boats, they'll either be disposed of in Hampton or in Seabrook, one of the two. And
Yeah,
Fish and Game picks them both up.
It's amazing. He was saying that that's one of the biggest problems are these lobster traps. So there must be a lot of them.
Well, they get swept up with the storms, and the marker buoys are usually pulled off of them. Some of them are just plain brought by the ocean up into the beach, and they're buried there, partially buried there until the spring.
They used to be made out of wood. Now they're made out of metal, so they probably sink to the bottom.
They do very well, yes. They're
And they're
made out
pretty
of-
big.
Yeah, they are. They're good size. And they have bricks in them just to make sure they get down to the bottom. You want me to bill them, I will.
Oh, I don't know. I think we had to talk about that, Phil, because
Maybe
we might
maybe
be
we
cutting
should,
off
as
our
a first step,
nose to spite our face on that one.
The contract is clear. It's not signed. I don't know when it does get signed. This willy-nilly, and again, the state's doing a great job, but it is a.
You got to watch all the
it is a-
details. I'm on your side with this. I just
We're-
want to make sure we don't step
Yeah,
into it.
we'll get there, but, and then that just brings up the other question on this memorandum of understanding and where that exactly lies for
Sitting on
signature.
someone's desk, it's red.
I am moving off the point, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Maybe as a first step, we should simply try and understand what that cost is.
Yep, we
Oh,
can,
yeah.
we
The
can
cost-
tabulate that.
Cost of the loader and the cost of
Yep.
trucking them down, and then deal with it once we know
Right.
what we're.
We can certainly
To
tabulate
the,
that.
well,
Thank you, sir.
to Phil's point about it sitting
Yeah.
on somebody's desk, why don't we try and, if we're done talking and now we think we've got a preliminary
I make regular
agreement?
calls.
Huh?
I make regular calls. I've progressed it now from the lowest echelon to, I think it's now at Bryce's desk.
Okay,
Which
'cause he
means
seems
that from
pretty-
there it'll go to the commissioner.
He seems like a pretty responsive guy
Yeah.
from what we've experienced.
And I understand he has 3 agreements sitting there to deal with us in some way.
Carry on, my good friend.
Do you want to, are you finished, Fred?
Yeah, I'm fine. Well, no, I've got, let's see,
Discussion with the
co-op. I did call the executive director. In fact, I met him at a meeting in Concord on Friday morning. And I can tell you at this point that they have been approached by at least one major player in the Concord co-op who would like to underwrite the costs of the city of Concord.
Casella.
Casella, yeah. They're talking about that. Whether or not that happens is something that should be decided. He told me a week from tonight I should know. If Casella is going to be permitted to underwrite that cost, then the process will move forward. If they are not, then the process will more than likely die.
Well, isn't Casella like a private entity compared to the town?
They are, but they're also the contracted operational people for the facility. So they're sort of cutting off their own nose to spite their face if they don't do something to try to save the facility.
So my question, I think, is this: what kind of controlling interest will they have, or will they, in this facility then, if they jump in?
I don't think they have any controlling interest because they're not a member of the co-op. What they're doing is they're financing.
I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is they've got to see something good about this, or they're not going to do it.
They're the operator of this facility.
Yep.
Okay, they will make a lot of money operating this facility. If this facility doesn't go forward, then they will lose all of the margin associated with that. If you look at, I got a copy of the, sent it to Fred and Keith of the recommendation coming from the Solid Waste Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like the thing was a disaster. The cost has gone up from an original estimate of $15 million to $18 million. The real concern that Concord had was the way they were going about financing it, and between using a lower percentage of reserves and all that, all things that looked like that they were solvable. And I think what Casella, my interpretation of what Casella is doing is he's coming in and saying, look, guys, this isn't really a problem, and we think we can help, and their interest is in that money that they will make operating the facility. And just incidentally, Casella happens to be the company down in Charlestown, Massachusetts, where we're currently taking
That's
single
correct.
stream recycling.
I also talked to Casella.
And my question, it's obvious, I mean, to me, the question is, to me is, there's got to be something very attractive in this, or they wouldn't be jumping in to do it.
Well, there's no question about that.
Okay.
And when you look at the totality of what's going on in New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously we have 2 big landfills
Mm-hmm.
currently in operation. We have no facilities for the processing of single stream waste. They're just not there.
Mm-hmm.
Waste Management does some recycling in that area, but they have, I understand, it's split between here and a facility in Massachusetts. So some of the material is sorted out here and goes to Massachusetts for resort. There's another facility in South Portland, Maine, which is owned by Casella through another company relationship. And then there's the one in Concord, and there's the one in Charlestown. So you have basically the whole state of New Hampshire is going to have to go someplace. They're looking at the amount of material that's out there statewide, and it's going to have to get sucked up someplace. They're thinking a lot of that's going to get pulled right into the Concord facility. They're looking at the potential to have this. It's structured to run 1 8-hour shift a day, but it's built to run 3 8-hour shifts in sequence. 2 would be operationally preferred in the long run. You couldn't really run at 3 because you have to have maintenance and so on and so forth. So you got to take it down for at least part of that third shift. They're thinking a lot of money is going to be made here. They're looking at, my best guess would be they're looking at several $1 million a year themselves.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get to, and don't want to belabor this, but if they jump in and they do their thing, at some point they have the control. They can squeeze us, all the contributors, right?
Well, no. This is
No?
more like issuing a bond.
Oh, okay.
You don't know the terms and conditions. This
Yeah.
is a negotiable situation that's going on now between the district, a consortium of number of towns or whatever in Casella.
They
But
might be
I don't
doing
think you can
something
assume
similar
that.
to Unitil and the Lane Library on the, it's,
Right.
they're going to get their $2 million back perhaps, or whatever the
Oh, yeah.
bonding
Right.
cost is out of Concord share. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah, they're obviously looking to get their money back. They're not going to give it away, and they're going to charge interest on it, and it needs to fall within the parameters of the pro forma.
And I'm not sure that they're even necessarily loaning any money.
Well, they may not be.
I think that what they're willing to do is step up and say, we'll be a guarantor if
Right.
there is a problem. At least that's the way I read it.
And it could be either one. Depends, Dick's
Right.
right. It depends on how the negotiation.
Being negotiated, right.
Right.
But either way, I don't think it's as, when this first popped up a week ago, it didn't strike me from reading the stuff I've read since then that it's as dire as it initially appeared.
Okay.
Now,
Thank
the other good thing is that I did talk to Casella, and I talked to their representatives in this area, and they are going to provide a proposal. Right now, we're tipping on the market as a spot tip, which means we're getting the lowest amount of revenue possible. If this plant goes forward, it may be a year or 2 before it's built. They're willing to take us in as a regular customer and take us off spot and put us on the regular market, which means literally that we'd be getting paid almost the same price as if we were going to Concord. That could
And
be
we're
a
getting
little-
paid almost nothing.
Right.
This
That-
yellow sheet that's the driver,
Yeah.
they call it the yellow sheet.
Yeah.
That's what it's worth, but it's the driver of the rates.
Right. And that keeps on going in this fashion, okay? Because it's based upon a paper market. It's not based upon other hard markets. They're talking about bringing a proposal back to us which would look something more similar to what would happen to their regular customers. That could be as high as $130 a ton, depending on what the market is at a given point in time. But it wouldn't be where we are now, which is spot, which is the lowest you can get, which go all the way down to 0. So we'll see what they bring forward for a proposal.
Okay. Thank you, Fred.
Any other questions for the town manager's report?
I have a couple. Fred, there was something about a meeting that was supposed to take place the end of last week with the Liquor Commission on getting paid for the sewage that they owe us and all that. Did that?
I did meet with them. It was agreed that they would install the water meters that are required under the rate. They requested to run those for 30 days and to take the necessary measurements, and then asked us to recalculate the billing, either up or down, based upon actual consumption over the period of time that we billed them for. No sense not agreeing with that because it's based on actual fact. So we're going to look at that, and at the end of the period of time, they're supposed to pay us our bill of whatever is due for the rebilling,
So
based upon actual consumption
Do they actually have a cycle to that facility like we do at the beach?
cycle.
Where there's more water used, more visitors, more people stopping by?
It's pretty consistent from what I understand.
Okay.
And that was one of the questions we went through.
Okay.
There may be a little peak in the summertime, but I don't think it's very high.
Okay.
They're looking at their sales in the plaza They do a lot more sales than they do bathroom work.
I hope so.
Apparently, they buy the stuff and take it home, so that the bathroom work is more done at home than it is there.
That all seems very reasonable.
Well, we're trying to take a fair approach to it based upon fact. And they agreed that we would do that, and we agreed we would do that, and they're not going to renege on the cost whatever that may be. If it goes up, it goes up. They'll pay it. So I think that was good. And Senator Stiles, I want to thank her for at least getting it set up so we could talk to them, because without her, this wouldn't have happened.
Well, the other item I had was more of a comment. Made the observation walking the beach this past week that it appears that the state park signed up with Waste Management for their recycling pickup. The reason I say that is most of the bins, the recycling bins, as opposed to the trash bins,
Right.
on the state side of Ocean Boulevard, the east side, are Waste Management. And in the past, they had picked it up with their own people and, taken it down to the transfer station. Did you hear any background information?
I've received nothing yet officially yet. As soon as I get it, I'll let you know.
I had a person that is handicapped call and ask me if I could bring it up about, she thought it was a responsibility of the town, but I think it's probably a responsibility of the state, that the handicapped parking spaces that must be roughly across from either the end of the casino or the boardwalk.
The end of the casino.
Yeah, that area there.
Right.
They've been blocked off for a year or more.
My understanding is they're never coming back.
Well, the handicapped person is contemplating doing something about this. I mean, what do you suggest?
Well, they can complain to DRED. They can complain to the Commission on Handicap. It is a potential violation. However, when they remodeled that entire area, all those handicapped spaces that were in front of what is now the seashell were all taken away, every one of them. What's happening here is that they're directing people to the town parking lot so they can park there for free, so we don't get revenue off it.
So there is no, the state doesn't have any other handicap parking?
Well, they can park at any metered spot that they
Any
wish
metered spot.
at the state. They don't have to pay.
Correct.
It's there free for them, and we're telling people that go up front if there's a space, park in it.
It sounds
as long
to me
as you
like
get
the
your plate
lady.
or
Sounds to me like the lady isn't aware of that.
No, I told her. She's aware of it, and she just still thinks it's wrong.
Well, I think it was wrong that they took the handicap parking away. They enlarged the parking lot, pushed the sidewalk out, and built the buildings closer to the road so they'd have more room for the buildings to make them larger. But that whole area from the south parking lot to the north parking lot was all handicapped before. It's all gone now. It's not
Her
coming back.
husband's a lawyer, so she just somehow thinks it's not right. Especially the amount of handicap spaces that they have designated.
It's very small.
Yeah, she said two.
But why does it matter? Why does it matter if a handicapped person can park anywhere? Then why does it matter if there's less or more handicap spots?
I think
If everything fills up, though, everything's filled up.
Okay,
You know.
okay, yep,
Yeah.
you hit it. Yeah.
I think it's
Oh,
a
yeah, like in the
designation,
grocery
that's
store, they're always all empty.
And,
Never can park.
and for what it's worth, today, between 9 and 10 o'clock, the parking lot was full all the way down to Boar's Head, which usually indicates all the parking spots in the state are full.
That's it.
Amazing.
Thank
One day
you.
in April.
Moving on to old business.
Can I jump in,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, with just a couple of quick things? So lights, we have any update on the lights?
Nothing to do with the state.
Okay, and just real quickly, because I said I would be quick on it, important issue, the DOT commissioner sent out a letter to the chair of the fiscal committee, the general court, Mr. Weiler, September 21st, and in just perusing that document, there have been a number of lights that have just been transferred to the Turnpike Authority. And seeing we have such a great relationship with the state, and a lot of times it's a frag order, perhaps that might be a way we could go. Next issue would be 7300, which deals with the beach, and Phil Bryce had sent that to you. on the 3rd of April, and that's Res 7300, Division of Parks. That went out on an email.
Correct.
We've got a boatload of presence on the beach. Fire, Mike alluded to it today, ambulance, police. It talks about, and I think everyone got a copy of this.
The proposed regulation.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
There's enforcement, there's administration, there's revenue sharing, there's, again, that metric of what we're performing. And I don't know if department heads have gotten back to you with any of this, if it's been submitted to them.
I had a long conversation with the chief of police. He read it. He went through it with a fine-tooth comb. There is not a thing in there about sharing revenue with the town.
Right.
The entire program apparently has been scrapped by DRED. That's not going to happen. And even if it did, the fine is only $50. We get $25 for taking somebody to court, which won't even pay the officer's court time. So the chief's opinion is there's no sense participating in something that you can't participate
Well,
in.
when you say the fine is $50, the fines are different depending on the violation.
We're talking about litter. The fine for litter was $50.
Yeah, it's a whole litany.
There's a whole
Right,
litany of
they're
fines.
all, with different rates.
But the intention here was for the town to work with DRED and the DRED officials to stop the littering at the beach.
Okay, well, it's a much more expansive document than that.
It covers everything in their entire system.
Right, but shouldn't we get back to them with input such as
Oh, yes.
that the littering
Yeah.
ought to be more?
I think that's part of our responsibilities, yeah.
Yep. And the chief and I talked about this the other day, and it's not worth our doing. That's something we have to get back to them on and tell them about.
Well, rather than saying it's not worth our doing, why not say maybe the littering charge ought to be $100 versus $50?
And we get 50
Right.
points.
Which still doesn't pay for the officer's time.
We're getting nothing now.
Well,
we
there's
can't enforce now.
only time involved if
Well,
the
the-
person doesn't pay the fine.
Well, there's two things need to happen. One, the fine needs to be realigned so it actually takes into consideration actual costs,
Right.
which I've asked for. Two, they need to rewrite the regulations so that they can actually ask our police officers to enforce the regulations. The way they're written now, we can't do that. It's not in there. So whatever Senator Stiles put in the original bill to get them to write regulations that would allow us to work with DRED to enforce, it's not part of their regulations. We couldn't do it. We get paid, wouldn't matter if the fines were $25,000. We would get paid nothing because we can't enforce it.
Okay, but just for a guy that runs down the beach and goes down there all the time, like all of us do, or live down there, police are on the beach.
Yep.
There's violations. They're going to write a ticket or make an arrest. There's an administrative fine, perhaps a criminal proceeding. Fire department is in there enforcing no fires. Those are our people. Those are our costs. So not to belabor the point tonight, but I think we should have some response.
Yeah.
Have an official
Yeah.
response
Oh,
from our department heads. We have a response. This is my opinion. And then we get with Phil on it.
Right.
Yeah. I think we should respond and try and fix it as opposed to, just
Right.
walking away and
Still
saying.
waiting for the fire department's feedback on this, but if it's as good as the police department, then this extensive work has to be done.
And can we start in instances like this that deal with the beach in terms of the beach, Hampton Beach District and the Chamber of Commerce? Can we send that out to them for a chop as well among the
sure.
liaison? I think that's important. There's a lot of folks down there with
Yep.
skin in the game.
One other comment I would make on the fines, and I don't think it's a piece of the fines that really interacts with our police department or whatever, but the fee for a meter that's run over is $50 in here. And I inquired, I called down to the parks people down in Rye there and asked, what is the current, because that seemed high to me, what is the current fee if you run over on your meter? It's $25.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of extreme.
They
You run
can't-
5 minutes over on
They
your
did
meter.
double that fee, yeah.
They can't spend that across the street with our businesses if it's going to the state.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I would like to suggest that we give feedback that for just running over on a meter, we're not talking about blocking a crosswalk or anything like that. For running over a meter, which is just the parks people writing those tickets, that maybe $25 or whatever is enough of an extreme rather
Yep.
than pop it in. And I don't know how some of this stuff is not well. You can tell these aren't necessarily written by people on the ground because it has a first offense of 50 and a second offense of 100. How the heck are you going to track that to determine that somebody has a second offense?
Well,
Or
the interesting part of all this is that it doesn't go before a judge. It goes before the commissioner.
Right.
which is something the police department has said has to change because we can't do that. It's not due process.
Since we're on the beach, if I can bring up
Yeah.
something that wasn't covered in Mr. Welch's report. All of us got an email this afternoon, fairly late, regarding dogs on the beach.
Oh, yes.
And I just wanted to get the information on Channel 22, and hopefully I'll be corrected to the extent that I make mistakes. As we all should know, there's two types of beaches in town. One is controlled by the state, and then there are a couple, Sun Valley and the north areas
North area.
that are town property. So as far as the town beaches are concerned, there's no dogs allowed on the beach between Memorial Day, which is still over a month.
Discussion of the Selectmen's 2012 defined goals. So here we have 14 suggestions for goals. And did we want to prioritize these or just come up with a smaller number of goals?
I felt like some of them could be combined.
That's what I felt also.
For example, the first, we had one that had 2012 with a flat tax rate and related to 2013 direction of the manager on the budget level. I think you can maybe even merge some of the stuff that has to do with the CIP and the forecast into that and end up with one objective there.
So which ones are you considering combining? Number 1?
I'm saying 1 and 10. I think that there's a way of doing that into a single objective. There's 13 is the town website, and then 7 is creation of a technical technology assistant group. I think those two can kind of end up as one. I think that the resolution of the old courthouse and all that, I think that's something that we should do, but I don't know that that has to be one of our major objectives.
I agree with that.
And we've already got that on an agenda for May the 7th, or?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So we're going to tell everybody to let us know what they want to do with it, we're going to bulldoze it?
I don't know how we're going to proceed, but I think we can schedule meetings on it through the course of the year as we lead to the
Right.
our November the 5th date.
We've
for
got 6
warrant
is
articles.
creation of a building advisory group, and then 9 is assistance and support from the Board of Selectmen on major construction projects. I think there may be a way to turn those two into one.
Yeah, because we've already have a creation of the building advisory. We just haven't got the people picked for it yet.
Number 4 just takes an action for us to agree to do that. Number 4.
What's that?
Number 4.
I see that one as being more complicated
Oh, really?
than that, yeah. I can comment on that now if you
Okay.
like. But I did that was one I brought up, and I gave it some thought. And I think there's a couple here that I would volunteer to write a draft of the objective as a formal objective. But in this particular one, I think I would articulate different than the way it showed up in the first pass. One, I think the objective is to improve the procurement process associated with large expenditures for goods and services with the objective of increasing the value received by the town as well as the level of transparency and credibility with the public. This would be accomplished by assuring a procurement system grounded in a competitive public process which strives to minimize restrictive or proprietary design specifications and bids, helping to assure a minimum of 3 bidders and solid justification for awards to entities other than low bidder. And just a few examples of things where I think if we have some focus on this as a major objective, we can continue to improve it. And I'd say in the last year we were better off than we were, 2 years or 3 years ago. So I think we've already improved. But for example, 718-4, the purchasing policy, states that sealed bids and professional proposals shall be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder or proposer, and that in addition to the price, except that the following should be considered, and then it lists some exclusions. They have to perceive that they can meet the quality standards, can meet the time frame standards, things other than price. But it's basically stating that it's price unless there are some factors that you can justify as to why it would be different. That's in our purchasing policy, yet it's not in our recent bids. And our recent bids contain that section of the policy. This particular piece is missing for some reason. I have talked, they were DPW bids, and I have talked to Keith, and he's actually issued an addendum on that. But some other examples. Historically, we've had bids for engineering-related projects. This goes back before Keith's time in the interest of full disclosure, but $31,000 to the Beta Group for that roads thing that really didn't come into play, and I don't believe there was more than one bidder on that. $46,000 to CDM for a wastewater treatment plant analysis, if you remember, from June of 2010. We only received one proposal on that. So I think the engineering, we talked about the fire stations when the chief was in last week. I think the engineering is an area, and I absolutely understand where I'm coming from. I'm not saying we should always go to the lowest bidder, but we should have comparative pricing, and then when we want to go to somebody other than the lowest bidder, there's just got to be a justification of what factors override price. Anyway, so I think it's more complicated than that, Mike, and I'd be happy to write a formal objective that goes to that particular one. I think we're going to be spending $12 million or more in the next couple of years between fire stations, Church Street, the drainage and sewer work, and the paving and whatever. Totally different animal than what the rate at which we've been spending on this kind of stuff up until now. So I think it's something that justifies that level of time and focus.
So did anyone else feel that they want to do any, did you want to volunteer to do that?
I'd be willing to take a pass at a draft on two of them, one being that one and the other being the financially related one. And it's just basically a first draft because I think it's going to stimulate discussion, particularly on the financial one, as to what parameters are going to enter the direction that we provide on the.
Is that the budget instruction? Yeah. Okay, that's good. We need somebody. We need to move it forward because it's probably, as far as the 2013 is concerned, it's. I know it's only March or almost. Well, excuse me. It's almost May. But probably we're going to be up against Fred's deadlines for getting instructions out to his people.
That's coming very quickly.
I'll try and get a draft of the objective. The objective isn't going to say an amount. It's just going to be an objective. Then we'll have a dialogue in terms of what parameters seem to make sense. My suggestion in terms of moving this along is if we could get somebody, Christina or whatever, to just look at this portion of the meeting and what has been said tonight, and I think that she can quickly whittle this list of 14 down just from watching what we just talked about. Combining the two building ones, combining the two IT ones, and maybe produce another version of this list and see where we ended up, whether it's 8 or 9 or whatever. Then I think if we look at that list, I think it'll become clear, do we want to live with this list or do we want to try and knock it down, further?
So just for Christine to know, it's combining 1 and 10, 7 and 13, and 6 and 9. Did anyone else want to discuss any of the other?
Also, it's eliminating 5. I don't know if you said that or not, Rick.
Yeah, and 5, I'm sorry.
I think 2 can be eliminated effectively. I mean, that just becomes our deadline.
Yeah. That's kind of a policy thing rather than an objective.
And I think that the number 14 is just common sense.
I agree, too.
14?
Yeah,
common sense.
I think it's something that's very important.
I will remember to take a nice bill when I go to other board meetings.
And there's no reason that we can't, I appreciate it going on the list, but my public information session on form of government, it can go off until 2013 for all,
So that's more of a political thing.
So you can do the information thing this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I think
you can go forward with the information thing, Ben. It doesn't necessarily have to be an objective.
It doesn't do anything. It doesn't take any of our time.
Right.
But I do need the board's support of it at some point if we want to keep it on the list.
I would like to actually, if it seems appropriate, make a motion related to the policy on the warrant articles. And we could literally knock that one off right now if we agree with the dates. And that policy being that a first draft of all selectmen-sponsored warrant articles would be completed by November 5th, and the final draft warrant articles completed by November 19th. I would make that as opposed to an objective, a policy statement, and I'll make that as a motion.
And then you need a second so we can all vote on it? I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Okay, so that's a
That one's
done
taken
deal.
care of. So that leaves us with major goals to complete the tentative agreements with the SEA contract. Improve the relationship between the town and the state through cooperation, communications, and joint efforts and partnerships. I think we talked about that tonight. And the one that Ben was talking about was the public information process sessions to study alternate forms of government, charter, town council, traditional town meeting for better citizens' understanding of Hampton's town government. And one that we didn't discuss was a cooperative student intern program with Winnicott High School with the town. Did anyone want to discuss that?
I don't even remember that one on here. Who's
Phil?
Yeah, I
Chris,
think that's a great opportunity for our young people, and I'm happy to run with that ball and move it forward.
That's fine. If you want to bring back some ideas to the board about that.
Sure, and I will just go, cross ship and work with Fred and the school
Sure.
department. And you,
Sounds
Mr.
good.
Chair. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we can scratch the old courthouse, too. All I do is decide right now,
Yeah.
like
I think
Richard
we
did,
did.
We did scratch
We
it.
did.
You did scratch it.
because we're going to do it.
Well, we're going to, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers all 14 of them, and with
Looks
Dick's
like we
help
might be
and
down to a manageable number, but if we could
Yeah.
have that list, just
We'll
like
have it
this
refined.
next
we
week.
can
Yeah.
discuss it again next week.
Yep, and can I just jump in for,
Yeah.
again, 1 second, Mr. Chair? I emailed you and Fred today, and Fred got back on this. The building committee's already in force, and is it appropriate to make the motion to staff that committee if it's in force?
I'd like to have some discussion on that.
Yeah, please, and I'm not even making the motion. I just want to throw it out there and see where we're at.
I went back, when we got it by email or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
and I
I
went
had
back
Christina
and
send it out.
looked at it, and I just had it kind of refreshed my memory. This was first brought up, must have been like 2 years ago
Yeah,
or
I think
so,
it was.
or whatever. And just a couple of concerns that I wanted to get out there. One of the concerns I've got is if you look at this, this committee is much more than an advisory committee that might help, say, for example, the fire chief, with
It's actually a
what he's...
working committee, yeah.
And I just have some real concerns. We're saying that this committee is going to approve or disapprove a design that the fire chief might come forward with. It says that the committee will supervise the construction of all projects for which the town incurs bonded debt, just as one example. And I'm just not sure that a volunteer committee, that we want to be tasking them to supervise projects. I think we're looking for more, an advisory thing, somebody that can help out with their expertise, as opposed, I don't think, you wouldn't ask the Energy Committee, the Recycling Committee, of any of other committees to have that level of responsibility. And that think about the time, and a lot of that stuff involves dropping what you're doing, which isn't, to really do that. So I have a suggestion that we take this document and maybe ask Fred to run that by a few of the department heads and get their input on...
That was a selectman adopted policy, wasn't it? Wasn't
Yes.
a town meeting.
No.
Right.
I was on a similar point, perhaps not very similar, as I was doing my research on the dog thing. There's actually something in that same 18 ordinance that talks about an animals commission.
Yes.
A veterinarian,
Yeah.
so we have all these things that we create, and it's easy to create them, but they stay in writing for years, and then you wonder why it was ever there to begin with.
Yeah, who was on the board in 2009 that sits here tonight?
Well, we all, Dick was, I was.
And you passed this in 2009, and now you have a problem with it.
To be honest with you, I had some reservations. I sat at the meeting that night and said, well, let me think about this. I'm not sure I want to make this contentious till I've given it some thought. And then nobody signed up, and it became a moot point. So that's the honest answer of
There were
what...
people that sent in applications to be on the committee.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason we scrapped it is we had specific qualifications here, and we didn't get, generally speaking, people signing up.
To fill all those slots.
So
categories.
I would just ask maybe that we maybe if Fred could go back, I think Chief Silva would be a real good one
Some
for
of the
his
people were
input.
highly qualified.
Well, the thing that your board in 2009 passed calls for an architect. I don't think we have an architect other than one we're paying for right now to be involved with these projects. It calls for an engineer. We don't have an engineer on board with this other than someone we're paying for. Someone who's primarily a contractor. We have plenty of great contractors. We're only paying for contractors. This is free stuff, and I think Mr. Nichols makes great points, and I think we should massage it, but I think we should execute what you folks voted in 3 years ago in a slightly different form.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can clear it off the agenda item for the year.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the April 23rd discussion with legislatures.
Love your work. On Good Friday, I stopped by the office, and those are yours. And if you wanted to share with the board, you provided those documents to me, and would you just explain those?
Sure. Back in 2010, I was asked by the board to figure out what it cost the town to provide services at the beach, the seasonal portion of it. And so I did an analysis. And I went to the major departments, police, rec, public works, fire department, and then also capital expenditures. And tried to figure out how much revenues we make from the beach and then what the costs were. Police department, we make $70,000 because of parking tickets. It costs us $560,000. So therefore, that's for the part-time forces, the motorcycle leases, et cetera. So therefore, net police department, $500,000. Recreation, we actually make $295,000 because of the parking lot. The income is higher than the expense. Public works, there is no income. There is $200,000 of waste pickup, et cetera. Fire department, basically there's no revenue, but there are ambulance calls that we don't transfer people, but we've already put time into that. Seasonal backup, operating costs, et cetera, another $483,000. Capital expenses, at the time we were looking at potentially at the beach station, the new pumper, which has come through. The new station on the police department, so I had to put something in because the police station is there because of the beach. That was another $900,000. So when we talk about what does the town get, actually it cost $1.7 or $1.8 million of our taxpayers' money to support all the services that are given down at the beach. And then Mr. Nichols actually did some research in regards to the state of New Hampshire, the profit and loss statement, and I believe this was passed out. And when you look at what monies they take in and what they spend, there's a net $660,000, at least from this analysis, of monies going to the state from the beach, from their revenues less the cost of their people, the lifeguards, the meter patrol, et cetera. So those are the two analyses that I gave you at that time.
In that second page that Mr. Nichols provided, what does the state make on just the platforms that are articulated on that document?
660 or 630?
Yeah. The meters was $689,000. This is in 2011.
And their profit margin is?
About 30%.
There's a whole bunch of different accounts, and I had to kind of dig it. You saw the thick report or whatever. But I think that the net of the whole thing, whatever the...
$2.2 million in income and $1.5 million in expense, or a net of $664,000.
Right. So the bottom line of the whole thing is, after everything's said and done, $600,000 and change leaves Hampton to go fund parks and other
and we
within the state.
incur the $1.7 million to support that.
1.1, I think is the net.
The number I came up with back in the analysis, $1.7 million.
That was total, but the net with the income, because of rooms and meals and whatever, I think dropped down to like
Right, right.
So that's our net cost revenues minus expenses. So
Right.
But the room and meals
We get that anyway.
is set on per capita, so therefore, whether anyone was there or not, we would get the $600,000 just because we had the number of people.
And just to clarify one other thing, Mike's numbers in terms of capital, like he talked about the fire stations, the police station, it's not like the entire amount of that. There's kind of an allocation.
Yeah.
You know, why do we have a police station that big, and what portion of it is probably tourist-driven? What we would have was not for that component, all that.
Yeah.
So I think it was a sound analysis that Mike had
Yeah,
done.
that's great work. And then you spoke tonight, and if you're looking at these payroll and operation figures, if we're committing $212,000 to fund the retirement phenomena that you spoke to earlier in your March numbers on an annual basis, if the operational portion that's dedicated to the state is, say, 20%, which perhaps the police would not disagree with, that's $40,000 from Hampton taxpayers.
The number that I'm talking about there, that is accrued benefits. When you really talk about retirement, okay, that is a much larger number off it that is being charged to have a current employee. Those numbers actually would be the ones I'd talk about.
1.4 million,
Yes.
I think, Group 1, Group 2 combined.
So that's another metric that I think I know I would be interested in delving into. And then if you could continue to be assistants as we go that, the department heads all know where we're heading in establishing that metric. The town manager does, the chair, and I think we're going to get closer to the pinnacle of that. And thank you for that information.
I'd like to at least give another view. I don't disagree with any of the figures. I'm not clear if I understood fully all the DRED financial statement or the Parks financial statements, because it appears that they did have cost. And I'm not here to defend the state, but there might have been cost in other areas that weren't allocated directly to that parking revenue. So I think we got to. I want to try to tone down as many problems as we have with the state. I'd like to tone down the argument here a little bit.
Let me explain to you what I did, though. I didn't simply look at the headline number on the front page, which was purely the parking, and had a number like 700,000, whatever, going out. I literally went through page by page.
Good.
And everything.
There's
Anytime there was
lifeguard
any,
costs buried
exactly
somewhere and all that.
For
kind of
example,
stuff.
there was an account called Seashell, which had some pretty good money in that, and I interpreted that to be that's just where they put all the maintenance people that clean up all the trash and go around sweeping or whatever. So,
and I think the other thing that it's hard to. I don't want this to become a town beach issue either. I mean, if we can talk about it being a town of Hampton and state issue, and we can try to modify that. But I don't want it to be a town beach issue because the taxpayers' money that we're talking about includes significant revenues from the beach, and some of those are paid by businesses that need this police protection and need the fire protection, and these are costs that are relating to their guests in the hospitality industry. So if we didn't have any water, the valuations would be a lot less, and we wouldn't have these costs.
We'd look like Kensington, which is where I live. When I moved there, we had more cows than people.
I think it clearly is a town-state issue, Ben.
Yeah.
And I think that what I'd like to think optimistically someday is this kind of information could be used in a manner that maybe ends up with a little bit of a tweak in the formula for the meals and rooms tax, so that locations that are encouraging.
That's taking the Don Quixote lance a little bit too far for me, but okay.
Well, you were so optimistic just a moment ago, Mr. Moore. And I would echo Mr. Nichols' statement that I think we have a great relationship with the state, and I think when you do great accounting work and employees do great work, like this web demonstration we had tonight, or all of our departments, I think it's upon us to do our good work and establish those metrics and then have a discussion. But again, I think we have a great relationship with the state. They're doing great things on the seawall down there. And of course, it's not a beach town issue.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If I could approach the board for 1 second, I've done an analysis. There's been some correspondence recently in regards to workman's compensation. The board has received and started to look at loss runs, And so I thought I would at least give an idea of how workman's comp does run. The board has received 3 loss runs, and what loss runs are claims that have been that went against the town, and they're made up basically of 2 parts. One of which is the monies that have already been paid out, like usually it's a medical bill or lost wages, and then also the per case. They look and say, okay, what do we think the outside cost? How much is this really going to cost us? And that's what happens is they set up a reserve balance. So the 2 costs add up to what the town, quote unquote, incurred in a specific year. I went back and looked, and in 2011, our run was $176,000, which is actually, that's not bad.
Thank you.
And you can join us now, Paul. A lot of a lot of people have been talking about your work that you've been doing on this web page.
Well, I'm mainly here so that it won't be a surprise. I'm pretty sure on TV they're seeing it right now, and I don't think it got shut down. Ah, there it comes. It's going to come in. I'm going to make somebody upset, but it's a little dark, but it's easy to see. All right, this is just I've been going back and forth with a rough draft of the website. And this is what I've mainly come up with as far as drop-down menus and whatnot, and I've been mailing out for you guys so you can see it in advance. And then to go to a department and whatnot, it'll just be the departments here. Not all the departments give me websites. Not all the departments want a web presence, so we don't give them all one. The boards that and committees that have given me sites, we put them up. So I don't do anything to change their site. This is what the Energy Committee has, and that's the way we're going to leave it. That's all their work. The trustees of the trust funds, the Heritage, the Historical Society, Channel 22. The big change will be the public notices. Rather than putting them on the front page, I threw just a sample banner up there. So that way you can see the way it looks. We could adjust the text so it's larger for anything that's important. And I figure what we'll do is we'll leave this stuff up here for at least a year. That way people can go back and look, oh, I did miss that, okay? It's in there as sort of, a history. They could go back. And if you don't want that, we can work out something else. That way there's a running tally. I can't click home because it's relational and it's to the old site. To the meeting calendar is still the same calendar. No, and it's down. I don't have it right now. That's right. All right. What did I put it? Forms and licenses, meeting, cordial ordinances. Forms and licenses, meeting postings. Important town documents. I just built a simple web. There seem to be some complaints that people have a hard time finding something, so if we'll take the Hampton Area Beach Commission, we click, it's the only thing on the screen. We hit return to menu, we go back, I could go to the town clerk, we could pull up the minutes for all the town meetings that we have on file. The finance, we just have the expenditure reports and then the audit statements. So I'm hoping that this makes it a little bit easier for people to find what they're looking for. It's basically still the same page, I just put a lot more hard returns in it, and when you click, it just takes you to that portion of the page. So it's just smoke and mirrors, really. All right. I got to go back several. The home buttons are relational, so they're not working. They'll take me back to the home page on the real
You're still
website
testing,
right
this
now.
is what you're saying, so it's not as if the user would be doing
Yes.
this once it's up and running.
Yeah, once it's up. The Code of Ethics are there, the Hampton Handbook. Hampton Handbook, it's nice and neat and everything. It's a 27 meg download. All right? If you have slow internet, you have dial-up, this is not something you need to be clicking on.
Is it a JPEG or is it PDF?
No, it's PDF, but it all came out as graphics. So there's nothing, when you download it, it's about 500K a page. All right.
I wonder if we can talk to Jay about anything that we could do to make that
if I
easier.
can, maybe I can do something later. I don't know, but right now that's what I have, and that's what it is. The Code of Ethics is like 2 meg, because it has your signatures. It got scanned in, and when it got scanned in, it went in as a PDF image. Not a lot I can do about that. Anything where I need to put your signatures on, that's the way it has to go. Online services is where we have a lot of stuff on the front page right now. The renewal registrations, dog license, online tax. I threw the GIS, which is buried in the tax collector, and the assessing page out here, and then the emergency notification addresses, where you can sign up to get that information for street closures and storm-related. Intranet is basically for the town web mails and the help desk. That's usually, I threw it intranet, saying it's inside our net. You click on the web, you'll get something. Help desk will send you to a dead page. And then the useful links. I threw the general court out there because a lot of people can't find the Hampton Court anymore. The statutes, the Beach Precinct, the Rotary Club, and then the Chamber of Commerce. So that's basically the web page in a nutshell. You'll see this one oddball link out here. Phone directory. Those of us who have smartphones can literally go here, click, and the links are set up so that you could actually get your phone to dial the number. For me, I found that useful. So I did my best so that it, and the growing portion of cell phones is outpacing landlines. So I'm trying to pretty much make it so that if you have your smartphone, you can go in, get your number, hit dial, and away you go. Making it as friendly as I can there. Out here, we have a Facebook-like, and I'm choosing to go with this versus a mail list. We've had the EOC mail list now for almost 3 years. I had 300 people. I got 3 crashes on my last test or bad email addresses. So now we have 297 email addresses for EOC. Out of 13,000, that's not a very good number for something that, when we have to put out information in a hurry. We were hoping that would grow, but it hasn't. But with Facebook, it seems that the growth is all there. The Parks and Recs had a Facebook page up for putting out their information. In 6 months, they've got 340 users. And that's just word of mouth. Once you like something, the average user has 180 friends on their Facebook page. Those 180 people see that you've signed up for it, and then they have a choice to like it or not at that point. And then that just generally pushes your view out to more people at one time. In my case, that's how I get all my retirement news from the military. My notices for mill pay come that way. My medical insurance updates through the military come that way. And it's just a convenient way for people to deal with the business today. Also, people tend to change their emails. As they do, they tend to update their Facebook accounts. Where if you have them sign up for lists, they don't do that. All of a sudden, they quit getting emails. Then I have to go back through and weed out all the postmaster errors and then delete those emails. So this is it's a lower maintenance way to do it, a more friendly way to do it. More people tend to like this. This is Facebook breakdown in the United States. My mother, who's 73, has a Facebook page. So it's not really an age bias on that. Although the people at that age generally don't have them, but they have a family member who does, or you'll have one per a household, okay? Which is usually the wife that has that for some reason. I don't know why, but that's the way it works out. There's more females that stay on that than males do. More than likely, we probably go back to the corner and watch TV. This is sort of, and we seem to be the largest users of Facebook as far as the nation goes. Now, just for an FYI, that's our town activity on our website. This is the month of March. Guess what that spike is?
Election day.
That was the day the file server took a crash. If everybody clicks it once, I'm sorry, large downloads, it's going to take the file server down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We have 10,000 unique visitors a month. We do 25 gig of files a month, okay? The average click rate per visitor is 2.4, right there, right above that line right there. It's 2.4 clicks per visitor. That click rate means that people come in, they grab what they want, and they leave. For the most part, there's not a lot of searching going on. The bandwidth, we're running into bandwidth issues. I can only dump so much money into this right now. I'm going to have to outsource the website. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're sharing this with email. Email has got its own unique particulars to it. Everybody wants it right now, and if there's no bandwidth, we can't give it right now. Things have to give. If you look at my access stats, where is my daily stats? Entry pages. That's files. By hour. When we're trying to do business is when my web page is the most busiest. It starts at about 7 in the morning and it doesn't give up until almost 10 at night. Or no, that's 10 at night, 2,200 hours.
That's why I do it at 2 o'clock in the morning.
So, we do a lot of traffic. So my outsourcing isn't, is a necessary animal. I'm going to have to put it up somebody who can host it and has a larger pipe that I can take advantage of.
So it's basically the bandwidth of the internet connection coming into town hall.
Yes.
Just the limitation, the bottleneck.
We just dropped the price on the internet connection. We got a 0.5 meg faster speed. That's a Band-Aid. To go quicker than that, we're talking many times increase in price, anything over 2 megasecond. The 3 meg is more like, it'll take you into the $1,000 versus the couple of hundred we're paying right now. Different equipment, different architecture altogether.
So where do we tap in?
Where do we tap in? Well, no, I'd rather outsource it. I can outsource it for a lot less money.
But where do we tap into the network?
For the internet?
Yeah.
The CO down the street. Everything goes through the CO. That's the nice thing about here is that the CO is a stone throw away, so I get the best speeds in town, just about. All right. Got any questions?
Anyone have questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. You say not all departments are participating on that, and you scrolled through it. Who's not participating on the website, and why?
I can't answer why. I can't speak for somebody else. They just,
When you say departments, there's the fire department.
yeah, they have a website, yes.
I'm not on it.
They're not on it.
Okay.
The town manager's not on it. The town clerk has one. The planning, they have a rudimentary site. We have good coverage.
Yeah, I just think information wants to be free, and I think people should have access to, including financial data.
Well, the financial data is up there.
Okay. On the outsourcing, can you be more specific on that, Paul? What does that mean?
Outsourcing means I rent space on a server and they provide services
Okay.
for us to utilize.
Totally transparent to
Yeah,
anybody.
for you, you don't see anything. I do a DNS pointer and I take it from point A and move it to point B. Generally, it's a 24 to 48 hour process to propagate across the internet.
Gotcha. Comcast does the cable in the town of Hampton, is that correct?
They do the cable in the town of Hampton, and we utilize a business class line for the PCs to go grab what they need.
Okay. Does our town contract with Comcast make any allowances for them to provide tech support to you and the town?
They provide tech support to us all the time, whether it's Channel 22 or I call them up, and generally I hit the business class number, and I have almost same day support if they are required on site. If they're not, I have somebody on the phone with me.
In terms of your outsourcing, is that a service or a technology they can provide to you?
I would rather have a professional hosting company who provides web services that I could probably more readily tap. If I go to Comcast, chances are I'm going to have the same thing, just an ISS page.
Wonderful.
I'm looking for something with content management. This way I can replace front page, not have to buy front page for every computer that has to update a website. That generally they give us some sort of break on site presence as far as indexing via Google or Yahoo, MSN. The bots are freely allowed in and encouraged to surf and go out and pick the information. They have teams that will actually lay out the templates for us, so that way when we do Exeter's page is one that we're looking at, the company, they'll come in, they'll give us 20 pages inside of a template. Then once we go, we start plugging into the template.
Gotcha. Paul, I think you're doing a fantastic job. I appreciate your answers. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Dick?
Yeah, a couple of comments and questions. One is on the web page redesign. I think that's an improvement. I think it's much cleaner looking. I think there'll be some grumbling initially because it represents change, but I think that people will find things easier on it in the long run. I'd like to clarify a little bit what Paul was talking about, the Facebook capability and the like feature and whatever. We had a request that came in from the recycling committee where basically they wanted to behave, what their request was to have essentially an email list where if they wanted to get information out to members of the public who wish to be put on this list or whatever, that they could do so via email. I passed that on to Paul, and then that's when Paul suggested, well, I understand the problem, but maybe there's a better way of solving it, and reference the Facebook-like capability. The other discussion that Paul and I had, and I think we were in agreement on that, is we don't necessarily need a whole bunch of whether it's email or like capability or whatever, distribution lists. In other words, one for the recycling committee, one for the energy committee, whatever. Maybe what we need is just basically two lists. The one that exists, which is essentially the emergency operations, which is limited in terms of the number of bytes you can push out because it's going to cell phones and pagers and that type of thing. And then a second list, whether it's a like, whether it's an email, whether it's both, that's available for a more general push out as opposed to the emergency. So that's kind of what drove that whole issue. I think if we're going to take that route, and I think it's a good route to take, such that whether it's the recycling committee ultimately or the rec department or the energy department or even a department like Public Works for a non-emergency, I think we've got to find a way to get the word out, as we've seen based on what lack of success there's been in the emergency one. I mean, literally, think about it. It takes, I signed up, it took me 30 seconds, 45 seconds, I'm on the list, and yet we've only had 300 people who wouldn't want to know that you don't put your trash out that day because there's a problem. It makes your life easier. I think people just don't know about it. So I think if we decide to go ahead with this, we've got to consider things like maybe little cards that you hand out when people renew their auto registration that make them aware of it, or maybe at the transfer station or something like that. The final question I've got, Paul, in terms of the web hosting, which from what you said appears to be driven by bandwidth limitations that you're experiencing today, would you be looking then at, as you and I discussed, considering other types of hosting environments as alternatives, maybe more powerful alternatives to like Server 2008 and IIS and whatever?
Most of these places I'm looking at, that's what they do. They give you, they deal with large businesses and governments. So they have the software and they have everything in, and they have the, if you put up a Jaluma server, I'm going to guarantee you, you're going to get hacked. That's saying target. I have sat down and watched the FTP server roll as some computer out of China tries to hack into our IIS server. Having a server, you're vulnerable. These guys, they have full-time security people that sit down and watch for the funny stuff. They can actually deal with it immediately. If I'm at the fire station, I can't be watching that. If I'm at Public Works, I'm not watching. Or even if I'm upstairs, I'm not watching it. Because my job takes me through the entire compound, all of the town. It's not just limited to this building or limited to my desk. So I just assume give it out to a company that's what they do.
One of the things that when Paul and I started discussing this that I found very attractive is that as you get into these more powerful web hosting environments, you've got much more sophisticated search capabilities on there. So if somebody comes in and they're looking for something, and obviously we've got gigabytes of information on there today, what I found, for example, with Keen is if I typed something in, the search engine would virtually, the 3 or 4 examples I tried, would find it right away. So even when you don't know, it's almost like, you know, the difference between Google, which is very, very effective in terms of finding stuff on the internet, versus, I don't know if you've ever tried to go to the state website and search in RSA, you get 150,000
A lot of hits.
150,000 hits, 149,000 weren't what you were looking for. So anyway, those are my comments. Thanks,
Do you have
Paul.
any questions, Ben?
I didn't understand necessarily all the conversation that's occurred here, but I want to thank Paul. This might have been in progress for a long time, but I know that it was mentioned by one of my fellow selectmen not too many weeks ago. So it looks as if you're reacting very quickly. So
Thank you.
And the outsourcing of the hosting is not going to cause you a major budget problem for this year?
Well, unfortunately, we've never spent money on the website, and we were told not to. So there's, we'll have to make do.
It's a rough order of magnitude as far as what you would think a year's cost would be?
I'm probably looking between $4,000 to $7,000 a year.
We'll have to consider that as things as where that can come from, I suppose, is the observation. Thank you so much.
All right, sir.
I don't really have any questions.
Thank you very much for coming. You did a great job with the presentation.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Paul.
And up next, we have Michael Swosser, monthly. Moving on to the April 23rd discussion with legislatures, identification of topics for discussion. Did you want to address that, Mr. Welch?
Well, the whole idea here was that the senator and the representatives would like some indication from the board about what you would like to talk about. The specific concerns the board members might have, that they could address and have advanced knowledge of those concerns so they could actually bring something in and talk intelligently about it rather than just proceeding through the docket, so to speak, that's currently before the legislature.
Well, I can think of a couple that just hit me right over the head. One is What are we going to do about these silly lights? You have any ideas on that?
Well,
The
my-
legislature passed the budget.
No, I understand, and the governor did not sign it. He let it go into law by itself. My understanding is, if what the reports in the press are correct, there will be no effort to amend the Department of Transportation's budget to refund or fund the lights that are going to be turned on.
I have a big problem with that because, and I don't want to dwell on that one subject, I have a big problem. Here we have a major department in the state of New Hampshire that I don't know how much money it takes to operate the highway department, but probably millions. And you're talking about a drop in the bucket for the silly lights. To me, they are moving everything aside and putting up public safety as putting us all at risk. I mean, can you imagine pulling up to the toll gates or any place where there's lights now and there aren't any lights? Or they said they're going to keep them on the 93.
Turnpike's not going to be a problem. They got money.
They got money. Going across, let's go across the Hampton River Bridge then.
That's not part of the turnpike system.
Okay.
We're talking
Unless
about
we
15
can
or
count them
16
into
lights.
it.
We're talking about 15 or 16 lights.
I don't.
Yeah.
I just can't believe that in this day and age that you're going to put up public safety, put it at risk, when you have this huge amount of funds they have in that highway department. I can remember 100 years ago when I worked for RCA and we took care of the highways computer over there. They were rolling in the money, either federal money or state money. So I don't know why they don't have any money now, disregarding the states in a bind. But I think they got their priorities slightly screwed up here.
Can I comment kind of on your comments?
Yeah.
One is, I don't know exactly why, and maybe somebody from our delegation has some knowledge on this, but it seemed that the hit that DOT took was very extensive. For example, if you recall, when the commissioner was in several months ago, whatever, my recollection was his budget, this is just the operating portion, not the capital and whatever, was dropped from like $550 million down to like $420 million. That's off the top of my head, but it was that order of
$150 million cut, somewhere in that order.
They took a huge hit.
Because they
don't
have to operate within the
Right.
highway fund.
This account alone, they lost almost $1 million.
So that's part of it. But the thing that I thought was just didn't make a lot of sense to me, if you read, I think Fred had sent it around in the past week, reducing certain line items like lighting and drainage and mowing of the roads by percentages like 80 and 85%. That makes no sense. I mean, you can cut stuff typically by 3% and 5% and all that without extraordinary pain. When you start cutting things by 10 and 20 as a general rule, it becomes painful. How do you think you're going to cut something like lighting or drainage by 80%? I don't understand that.
Well, one of the problems they had here was when this budget was passed, it became effective last July 1, and DOT took no action to cut anything, any of the line items. So what's happened is now they've had to transfer more than $500,000 just to keep the streetlights on, because there was no money left in that account to fund it. In doing that, they had to take all the money away from drainage and mowing and guardrail repair and all the other things that make the operation successful and protect the public interest in order to fund this, because they didn't want to shut the streetlights off. They haven't done that yet. Eventually, they're going to run out of money for everything in those line items, and nothing will be done.
But I think at a high level, I think the question to our legislators, if that's one we want to ask, is just why, what was the thinking in the area of DOT? Because we're now seeing the results of that.
If they wanted to reduce their expenses by a big chunk, I mean, I'm not saying what they should do, because you can't see the picture from here, and I don't know if they can from Concord or not either, but that's debatable. But I'm just saying, if you have a 500, how much was their budget again, roughly? 400 and some million, you said?
I remember it as like 500 and something.
Close to a little over half.
Dropping down to like 420 or 430.
And you want to reduce it by, say, 20% or whatever they want to do. I can't see how they can just take it out of appears to be one spot. If they wanted to reduce personnel, they wanted to get rid of some of the trucks they have.
This was a specific cut one line item by reducing that line item by half, and there are others in the budget that were reduced by half as well.
But we're not going to solve the problems of DOT sitting at a selectmen's meeting tonight.
I know.
My suggestion is just that might be a high-level question, for the legislators.
Right.
And is there anything planned going forward
Right.
Is it felt that was the right thing
We're
to
going
do.
to take the 10-year plan from 5 decades ago. It's now a 35-year plan or a 37-year plan.
Which is now back to a
Gonna make it-
10-year.
Yeah. Well, that's because they took a lot of stuff off of it.
That's correct. They took it all off.
So, anyway.
Do you have
enough.
some suggestions, Bill, that you'd like to discuss? with the
Yeah,
legislature?
I think our delegation, the senator and the representatives do a great job. I think they're quick to respond to information. You watch the email traffic, them coming down here. They serve up in Concord for no money. They do a great job. There is no money in Concord. It's a nightmare. They're challenged up there. They're making decisions based on executive orders. They're making decisions on budgets, and it's hard work for them. And I think with our special relationship and the money that we produce out of here, Mike and Richard did the numbers for just the state park. It's profitable, and we have a special relationship. And I think it places an unfair burden to always go to our state reps, where we need a different venue going to the state where it's something closer to the flagpole. And we get a quicker response. It's a special condition that's down here. You saw what went on with the sewer department, and that need to do some renovations, if you will, or a rebuild. We commit a lot of our infrastructure and operations to the state's benefit, and they do a lot for us. But I think it's unfair to always go to our delegation, because then you go to Concord and there's 400 or 500 other people up there, and we get lost in the shot. It's the beach. It's the beach. So if we could identify perhaps a different path, communicate better, and really exploit what's already a good relationship and drill down on it. You know, something as simple as those lights. People change apartments all the time. You give a different name. They change it to Turnpike. They go, yeah, it's the beach. And you get 15 lights. Boom. And we need that kind of decision making. And you don't need to be down to the 11th hour when we have 250,000 people at the beach. And maybe it's a hurricane coming in or some crisis. So I think if we keep it at that strategic level and kind of talk that way and actually do map out a different line of communication that gets maybe to the governor's desk a little quicker and to department heads, that would be nice. That's my
You're
input,
going to
sir.
call your friend
Some
up,
good
the governor, and
suggestions.
suggest we get more attention then, right? Is that what you're going to do, Phil?
Well, that's just...
Thank you. He raised some good points.
Oh, yeah, I'm not picking it. I was just curious.
Yeah. Okay, the town manager's report.
Mr. Chairman, contracts for the construction of the Smutty Nose sewer line extension, that's on Toll Farm Road, were signed on Wednesday, April 18th, 2012. All the work will be at no cost to the town. It's my understanding that they're going to do the road digging first, try to get that out of the way before summer comes, so there'll be very little excavation and construction going on up there. The last part of the project will be, as far as the road's concerned, will be the hanging of the sewer line under the bridge, which crosses 101. And then there'll be the off-site or off-road construction of the actual pump station itself, which will be a small building and a can, or what we call a can, which is a prefab sewer station. The director of the Department of Public Works has sent a letter to the State Department of Transportation, Division 6 in Durham, requesting that they cease and desist from instructing citizens to call our Department of Public Works on requests for crosswalks to be painted on Ocean Boulevard or crosswalk signage to be installed, because the state is informing callers that it is the town's responsibility to install such devices and do such painting at no expense to the state. And I know that that's something that's discussion's currently ongoing with that, and hopefully we'll come to some conclusion. The memorial for Chief Maloney was very successful, thanks in large measure to the work of our police department in coordinating this large event, with outstanding assistance from our fire department and our Department of Public Works, as well as assistance from other communities across the seacoast. It was what I can only describe as a certainly unique experience to be involved in that. From a town perspective, planning occurred in a matter of just a few days. In such a very large event. It was very well done. There is a study for coastal flooding in Rockingham County, which is currently underway and could result in possible changes in flood insurance maps, terms, insurance requirements with FEMA. Let me just comment on that because I want people to know what's going on. The maps for Essex County in Massachusetts, they're working north. Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, were recently completed. And I guess I'm quite disturbed about the result of that, because what they have done is they have completely changed the system used by FEMA for flood management and for insurance, which is the most important thing. My understanding of what's going on is that they have changed the flood elevations. And for those people who are in non-special flood hazard risk areas, or will be classified there, you can purchase your insurance now for, and this I'm quoting from what they hand out in Massachusetts, the first year grandfathered rates are $388. The second year is $1,808. If you decide not to purchase it during the grandfathered period, the cost jumps to $3,062 and then to $6,843. We need to pay attention as this program progresses in New Hampshire, because rates could be similar. They could be the same thing. Basically, the federal government's undergoing some real stressful areas in paying for floods that have resulted across the country in the last few years, and of course the fund is being depleted. So they're redoing the entire system and coming out with higher rates. When they get to this system and they release their figures, people are encouraged to go ahead and buy the flood insurance so they'll be grandfathered. Because if you're not, then that $3,000 figure may be what you buy it for. The hook is that you cannot sell your house unless you have the flood insurance. That's what's being put into the FEMA statute. So it's important that you have it, because you can never be able to sell your property again without buying the insurance. At least that's what they're telling people in Massachusetts right now in the last finished process.
That's not making sense. If the issue is one of the buyer, at least historically, in financing, okay? In other words, if you're going to purchase a house, you wish to get a mortgage, and you're in a flood zone, in theory, the company writing the mortgage is going to tell you that you have to have flood insurance, okay? If you're not taking out a mortgage, then there's no issue there. It's your decision whether you want to take the risk. What are they? I mean, I don't think the federal government can say you can't sell.
Quite a mandate.
Hmm?
That's quite a mandate.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion on that.
Could you email that granularity to the board members, please?
I will.
Mr. Manager,
Yeah.
thank you.
We will do that. I'm just concerned that there are things going on that we haven't been informed of yet, and they're just beginning the process in New Hampshire. The explanation they're giving in Salisbury, Massachusetts, where the last unit coming up this way is quite inconsistent with their position in the past. And I agree their position in the past was you had your option. You could either purchase or not purchase. If you were in a flood zone, you had to purchase to get your mortgage.
Right.
They're basically trying to change those rules so that it works in some other manner. And that's quite a heavy penalty to undergo. It's also a remarkable change. What they're really saying is, you need to buy now, or we're going to hit you twice as hard later. So
Yeah,
it's
interesting
not fair.
to see that.
The other thing I have, Mr. Chairman, and I see the Chairman of the Energy Commission is here, is that I have the contractual obligations for the funds to be committed to the library from Unitil, and they require a few signatures by the Board of Selectmen. So if we could, Mr. Chairman, add this to the consent agenda and
No problem.
get these signed.
I didn't realize that was you. I thought, who is that with an orange shirt on? You were right behind everybody.
Hiding behind this chair.
Well, definitely we'll put that on the consent agenda. Did you want to say anything about that?
Just answer any questions if you have them.
Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
This is
Dick?
the $80,000.
This is for the
The
for the
improvement.
library. It was
I
approved
would
in
not add it to the consent agenda.
I
I would move that we approve it.
Just
I don't
approve
think
it?
there's any issue with it, but I think it's worthwhile an explanation, whether it's Mark or Dick, or, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer that we approve it.
Did you want to talk, Dick? Why don't you join us?
Just to give you a quick update on where we are with this program. In regards to the chiller, the chiller has been ordered by the contractor, Dowling Corporation. It will arrive somewhere the first 2 weeks of May, and it will take Dowling about 2 days to install that. Okay. What I'm trying to do here is to get all the paperwork together and get it to Dowling or get it to Unitil as soon as possible for the chiller. In the case of the lighting system, we're still working some issues with the contractor, and we're trying to pull together the rebate package and get that to Unitil. You have both of the applications there. So, and Mark's been through them, and we've discussed, any issues with them. So,
Can you take them with you tonight, or?
I would like to, if possible.
Okay. So, did we want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would have more problems actually adding it as a consent agenda.
Well, we just, somebody make a motion.
So I would move that we authorize that we sign these papers.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I have a question. Are you personally liable for this in case we don't want to pay it?
Well, I've got five, after my vacation, I've got $5 left on the credit card, so.
The point of having, just to recall from Warrant Article 10 that was passed overwhelmingly,
Mm-hmm.
the point of having this board sign was that the library trustees did not have the authority to take out
Correct.
a loan. We will be, I believe, still the first municipality to have taken advantage of this particular program.
Yeah, we are the first and the only applicants for this money, municipality or not. And I know that Tim Nunes and I will be giving a talk at the Rockingham Planning Commission meeting a week from today about this program to try to spur some interest in it. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So.
Seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I believe on the town website is now the memorandum of agreement that was referenced in the warrant article, in which the trustees, the library trustees, are taking full responsibility for paying back the money, which triggers into what you just said. And so it does not have a budgetary impact on the town, and this is expected in savings to achieve more by way of savings than the cost of the items. The point of having, just to recall from Warrant Article 10 that was passed overwhelmingly,
Mm-hmm.
the point of having this board sign was that the library trustees did not have the authority to take out
Correct.
a loan. We will be, I believe, still the first municipality to have taken advantage of this particular program.
Yeah, we are the first and the only applicants for this money, municipality or not.
The point of having, just to recall from Warrant Article 10 that was passed overwhelmingly,
Mm-hmm.
the point of having this board sign was that the library trustees did not have the authority to take out
Correct.
a loan. We will be, I believe, still the first municipality to have taken advantage of this particular program.
Yeah, we are the first and the only applicants for this money, municipality or not. And I know that Tim Nunes and I will be giving a talk at the Rockingham Planning Commission meeting a week from today about this program to try to spur some interest in it. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So.
Seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I believe on the town website is now the memorandum of agreement that was referenced in the warrant article, in which the trustees, the library trustees, are taking full responsibility for paying back the money, which triggers into what you just said. And so it does not have a budgetary impact on the town, and this is expected in savings to achieve more by way of savings than the cost of the items.
I think in the case of the boilers that we installed in October, I believe the savings that we're seeing so far in natural gas is in the neighborhood of 45%. The cost of natural gas, and this will to save us probably just as much on electricity from the
It's
demand
still
side.
going down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. And we'll have it ready for you in just a minute.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions for Fred's report?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Fred, the DRED MOU, when we talked about that last week, it was sitting on desk somewhere in Parks. We have any idea?
They've sent us a draft. Keith and I have both reviewed it. It's going back. They put some additional information in it, like, for instance, any communications equipment used in their property is subject to their communications policy. We've asked them for a copy of that because we, fire, police, and public works want to know what that is. There are supposedly limitations contained within the policy. We'd like to know what it is before we ask the board to approve it. And there were a couple of other finite details that were just miswording that we've asked to have changed. That's the only thing that's holding it up right now. It's gone back. We've asked them to send the material to us and right away so that we can get this done.
Are we working with a particular individual at this point? So it's
we're
not
at Phil's desk.
Okay, so it's not sitting on. Okay.
Yeah.
I had one other question. We put out several bids related to sewer and drainage. One related to Fairfield, Belmont, and Ruth. The other related to Moulton. That I think the total amount of the two was $400,000 or $500,000, and the bid responses were due in Thursday.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's anything you can say about those at this point.
Moulton is going to be rebid. I know that. The bids did not come in well on Moulton. They were very, very high, and there were only a couple of bids. So we're obviously going back out to look at that. They were much too high for what was being requested. The others, I haven't received the information back from Public Works.
Okay, so they're still looking them over.
They're going through the process of tearing them apart.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Nope. No one else? Okay. Moving on to old business, the Coalition Community Statewide Education Property Tax. And who's going to be talking about that?
I think I sent all that material out to the board.
Does somebody want to start?
I believe that somebody from the board has been requested to go to Concord and testify on that particular bill, which is the statewide education property tax. I think one of the things that we need to think about is we're testifying on this or trying to eliminate the statewide property tax. There's a process that the state is going through at the moment, and I think, Dick, you and I have been involved in this to some degree because of assessing, and I know Mark has as well, where the Department of Environmental Services is giving discounts on taxes because of the environmental requirements of the various public utility plants in the state. If that goes forward, the statewide property tax, which is currently in effect, at least for billing the utilities directly for education tax through the state, is going to be lowered, which is going to cause a problem somewhere along the line. You can't lower assessments on the utilities and then collect the same amount of money. So I think it's going to be a problem for the Senate and the House to try to get that back in line because they're going to lose money. The utilities are going to be paying the state less. So somewhere along the line, there's going to have to be an increase in the amount of taxes paid in cities and towns.
Has someone shown an interest to want to go and represent Hampton or talk?
Not as of yet, no.
Is there anyone here that wants to volunteer for that?
I would be not speaking in the coalition's favor.
This is something that Jerry was actively involved with in the past.
Do we have to have a selectman, or can we have a selectman's designee?
Or we can send something in writing from the board.
Can I ask a question? And I may have just missed it. Most of what I saw in our box this past week related to the state property tax.
Yes.
Had to do with, convincing our legislators to work together, the Senate and the House,
right,
to try and get a
constitutional amendment.
I didn't pick up on them wanting somebody to testify. But what
they want someone to go down when these come up for hearing and talk to the respective committees and speak to our legislators and any other legislators they may know to try to get approval for this constitutional amendment.
And who asked for that?
That was the coalition over in Portsmouth.
Okay.
So I think a letter will do the same thing because we're pretty well
letter,
respected.
maybe you could put a letter together. Where do we have to send this letter?
It'll have to go out this week, so I'll get it together and email it out.
Okay.
Well, back to the question I asked, though, Nancy said that it's much better if we have somebody come up there.
Do you want to go?
No, I said, can we have a designee, was my question.
Well, I think that, sending a letter is what Mr. Welch recommends.
If a selectman can't go, I'm there all the time. They all know me.
Okay.
When a selectman goes, it's kind of like the governor coming in. The effect is like the governor coming in to testify.
Really?
The committees don't get to see selectmen. They don't get to hear elected representatives of cities and towns.
Really, I
Very
thought they were
often.
tired of seeing me.
Oh, no, I think they love you. And they rely upon you to present them the information they need. And that's effective, because now you're elected. You're representing someone. The appointed officials, they see us there all the time. It's almost a matter of, do you really have to testify today? Can't you just sign in? So
It sounds like a letter might be our best.
Well, I was just thinking, if Nancy conveyed that message a while ago about it's good to see the body, and I think Fred sort of reiterated that, I think it behoove us to send somebody out. But I'm not saying I'm a good speaker up there or anything like that. I'm not saying that.
Okay, well, seeing how we have no volunteers, I think
we do the letter, and if we have to follow up with someone, perhaps the opportunity.
Then we'll
will
draw
arise.
straws, okay?
Thank you. Now, it is 9:35. We could go on to 2012 selecting goals, or would you, Mr. Nichols, you said you prefer to talk about it next week? Or?
My suggestion was, I think that's a complicated subject, and I know we typically start getting punchy and whatever. I think in order to, I don't think it matters whether it gets deferred a week. I did write the two objectives, drafts of the two objectives that I agreed to do, one of the financial stuff, one of the procurement. I didn't write those till today, so if we defer to next week, it gives me an opportunity to shoot them out to you and look at them.
Does anyone have any problem with that?
2011 abatement season is here. I'm starting to respond to them, make decisions, and of course bringing them to the board as recommendations. Tonight I have 35, the first 35 that I'll be presenting. I don't know if anyone has any questions regarding that list, or any questions, individually on the ones that were submitted.
I have a couple more for the benefit of the public. Ed, how many abatement requests were there in total for 2011?
100 abatement requests.
Okay, and given that we had a reval in 2011, what's your feeling about, what sort of an indicator that is?
It's actually a good indicator that values are very equitable as a result of the reval. Typically, not to say that there's a typical number out there, but typically you may see 200 to 300 to 400 abatements, just because of a lot of data entry issues or changes in guidelines based on the new sales that we review as part of the revaluation. In this regard, what we saw a lot of was more data corrections than actually corrections to the model. So it was very encouraging only to see 100 of them. So yeah.
Think about it, 100, there's roughly about 92, 93, 9400 properties
right,
in town, so that's essentially only about 1%
right, yep.
of the total. I know there have been revals in other communities recently, Portsmouth in particular, that there was substantially more as a percentage, 4%, 5%, or whatever. So I think that the fact that there were only 100, and as Ed pointed out, a lot of these were just data issues as opposed to things where the model was, knock on wood, very positive. The only question I had, it wasn't so much a question, but if you could explain it for the benefit of the public, there was 7 of those 35 had to do with the precinct exempt aspect of whether or not somebody was in the regular precinct tax bracket or the exempt or whatever. So just for the benefit of the public, could you, some of which you denied, some of which you recommended approval of?
Right. Every year we receive applications, and we present them to the commissioners for approval to be in the exempt precinct class, which is a lower rate based on residential use. Last year, or every year when we get those, we keep a spreadsheet, but in most years, we'll have a discrepancy of 5 or 10. A lot had to do this past year with, if you remember, a couple of years ago, we sent out notification to all the property owners in the precinct. We approved those letters. Last year, we didn't send those letters out. They were not requested to do that. And I think a lot of people may have expected those, and some didn't apply. So we had 7 people that were concerned about the fact they didn't have the exemption this past year. We were able to discover that 2 applications did exist, but they didn't get into the system correctly. So 2 of those, as you know, we approved. 5 other ones, we weren't able to locate any applications. And of course, we had to deny those. We did send a letter to the commission explaining the process, and within your abatement applications, you'll see that letter that was sent to them. And that's typically what happens. So the system itself may have some errors when we transfer the data. The other is to make sure that there's an application evident for each property that believes they applied to verify.
But the end result was in 2011, there were only, what, 200 or 300 people?
263.
As opposed to 2010, where there were
700, over 700.
Right.
Yeah. This year, we actually just implemented all the information. We have, I believe, 307, right in that number, that applied this year. So a few more than before.
Any other comments? Mr. Pierce.
Following up on that, what is the requirement for a taxpayer who lives in a precinct to make sure he gets that allowance every year? Does he have to submit that form every year?
Every year, that's required by April 15th to be submitted to us or directly to the commissioners.
Is that a town guideline or a precinct guideline?
I believe it's a precinct guideline based on that statute that to grant the residential properties an exemption.
You would think that once you got it, you'd be okay for a while.
The problem is the statute that was passed back in, do you remember the year? What, 1990 or something like that?
Wrong, it was in the early 90s.
Right, basically created that requirement. So it's a function, the fact that exemption exists is a function of state law that was passed that required that in the language of the state law, and it was the interpretation, I think, of both you and the town attorney, that there wasn't a choice, that it had to be done annually, correct?
Yeah, there's criteria that has to be met every year.
You're certifying that it's not rental property.
That's correct.
If
Right.
it's been residential.
Right, I think there was a
Used
method.
it as residential, you're just certifying every year that it's not.
It's not-
been-
still
And
not
that,
rental.
what you're just hitting is the specific language that drove that opinion, so.
So you'll have to do it every year as a resident.
If I want to not pay that.
No, I know this discussion's come up a few times at the precinct meetings, and I think it was back to you saying something about mailing them out one year, and there was a discussion about mailing them out again this year, and I guess the town would do it if the precinct would pay for the postage or something like that?
Right, they paid for it, I think it was 2 years ago. We requested that last year, but they decided not to.
Yeah.
to spend
Actually,
the money.
the town paid for it 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, yes, we paid, yeah, exactly.
Anyway, answers the question, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
I just would note that these 35 total $16,000, a little bit over $16,000 in abatement.
Yeah, I'm sorry
And
about that.
it's probably, and there's no way to know whether this is going to be linear for the remainder, right?
Well, there's 92 residential, well, there's some commercial mixed in there. It doesn't look too bad right now.
Okay.
But there are
some big ones.
There's some big ones mixed in.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bean?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Nichols?
If there are no questions,
Any
I would make a
comment?
motion to approve the 35 abatements as recommended by the assessor.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Appreciate it. Yep, have a good night. Thank you.
Yes. And for
Whenever I see a minute, triple it.
Oh, no, I got some old business.
Oh, that's
It's
right.
not on the agenda. How about that?
Okay, well, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll make it real quick. A couple of meetings ago, maybe a couple months ago, Fred, you mentioned something about the pins. It's come to my attention from some taxpayers and people who have a good flavor about the pin thing for the employees. why pins? Why not try something else? Nobody wears pins anymore except old people like me. So that's a suggestion. Can we think about something else instead of the pin? Rather than trying to pursue this buying 1,000 and trying to figure out what to do with them?
Try anything you want. I mean, that's the proposal we brought forward to the board. The board thought it was a good proposal initially, so we did that. We didn't have the money to do it with properly, and we shouldn't have done it probably, but we did what we could.
Right.
The board then directed us to go out and see if we could find good pins. We've done that.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
nothing invested in this other than some time to
No,
find them.
I've appreciated what you've done
pain
here.
in the neck, but
It seems like we're getting nowhere fast on this, in my opinion. And the pins, you can see how many I have on. I must have 50 in my bureau that I probably will never throw away. And then maybe 50, maybe 35, I don't know, a bunch of them. And the point being is we can't seem to decide, for various reasons, where we're going to go with this. So my suggestion is, why don't we think about gift cards? Have a nice lunch on the town. That's one of the things my company did. Okay, for example, just toss it out. What do you want for honoring working for the town for 20 years? I think we ought to come up with some good ideas other than, here's a little pin, as we talked about before, the ones were kind of plasticky, and I'll leave it there. I think we need to come up with, think outside the box. That's all I have on old business. I have some new business stuff.
Okay. Any other old business? Ben?
No, sir.
Bill? Dick?
Nope.
Nope. As part of new business now, were we going to have any discussion about, about the meeting that was canceled this week? Did anyone want to discuss that?
Would you like to leave tonight, or do you want to?
Well, no, you know,
I think I'll kind of grab that. HVAC was going to have a meeting. It was going to be of a certain cast of noble public servants and philanthropic, community-minded individuals. We looked at the source documentation for their authority. We vetted it through our legal, and it was decided that that was probably not a good idea, and that's where the issue stands. And unless somebody that had proposed that meeting wants to come forward and reassert something different, I think we let sleeping dogs lie. Would that be a good interpretation, Fred?
it might be a good interpretation, but of course somebody's now proposing another meeting. So I guess the question is, if the board wishes to participate in such a meeting, do you wish to participate in the format that you're in now, where all board members are here? It's called a public meeting, and everybody comes and discusses it in public. Or do you appoint a committee and discuss it, you know, you want to Concord to do it in some department, or you have somebody come here and you sit and meet with them, or it comes under the venue of a different agency like the HVAC. You need to tell me, because I'm just passing information on. I don't schedule these bloody things.
You don't want to be caught in the middle of that.
I know, I don't want to get caught in the middle of
someone trying to reschedule an appointment now?
There is an attempt to reschedule one for later on this month.
I thought I would
Please.
bring it up just so that Phil and probably Ben understands. These memorandum of understandings, there was supposed to be one, as I recall, one for the town, one for the precinct, and one for the Chamber of Commerce, because they have some issues that they're dealing with the Chamber of Commerce. That's how it was proposed at the
DRED.
beginning. Wasn't it all of them, or?
No,
with DRED.
No, just with
With
DRED.
DRED. The state DOT was a separate issue, which is something they want us, the HVAC would like to see started at this point in time. That's been going on since 1959. So nothing's been decided since 1959, really, because nothing could be. The question is, how do you want to format that?
I think it should be done in public myself.
I tend to agree, and I tend to think that if we're going to negotiate with the DOT, that it's got to be the whole board, because my personal feeling is that it's going to be a very tough discussion and some tough negotiations, and having any kind of a go-between, I think, will be ill serve both parties. That's my opinion.
Here's town council. Where I didn't raise the issue here at the meeting tonight, but it's from town council to us, and he doesn't support the meeting. And if you look at the supporting documents, and everyone was copied on those, from the RSAs to the Hampton Beach Commission, our town attorney says there's no legal authority for the HBAC to grab the lead in orchestrating or crafting this MOU. It's clearly with the Board of Selectmen. So there's no legal basis for them to do that. We're engaged right now, and we've talked about budget issues. We've talked about pinching pennies, where we provide $1 million of services to the state unreimbursed. This is going further on down that line. We're talking about provision of government services with an MOU directly to a phase line, which is state property. We don't need the Hampton Beach HBAC to provide that. A good portion of those people are not town residents. Some of those people work for the state. The person that is suggested to lead this meeting is a transportation specialist. How he integrates with our chief of police in legal issues, the fire department and public works, is beyond me. So I think it's flawed with problems. It's a non-starter on a legal basis, and for us to acquiesce to that is not as professional as perhaps we might want to be, notwithstanding their good graces in wanting to accomplish that.
I totally agree with that also.
Thank you, sir.
I have very little skin in the game. I suspect that if we wish it to be a public meeting, which is I have no problems with, that we'll just increase the times since 1959 that it was last discussed. I don't think DOT will come in.
It's possible.
At least on the particular issues that they may have wished to discuss at this other meeting.
I mean, even if you look at this from the standpoint of not wishing, or one of the entities not wishing to hold it in a public meeting, okay, and have the discussions take place, the preliminary discussions take place outside of that forum, it's still all we're going to come back to this board. And the board has to make a decision, which means everybody's going to sit here and discuss it anyhow.
And our
I
department
think we
Yeah.
should be there at the beginning rather than
Oh.
getting it at the end.
Well, could we have,
Your decision. I
could,
mean, you have
to
make that.
satisfy their concern about negotiating in public or talking about their position in public has been brought up. I think that we could, if we're negotiating a contract, wouldn't it be proper for the selectmen to have a non-public meeting and discuss it with the DOT people? Is that proper?
You're not.
It's not a contract.
I'm not
This
sure.
is not a contract.
I'm not sure.
MOU is not a contract?
No.
What
The only way this can become a contract is if it goes to governing council.
Okay, so is there any legal rationale that we could have a non-public meeting to discuss an MOU with them?
I don't see it in statute.
Okay, that's the question. That answered my question.
The only thing in the statute that I can think of is the thing that has to do with land.
Yeah.
The exclusion to do with land, but it's broader than all that.
Yeah. Much
But
broader.
and I think that the way it was communicated, and that was the idea behind the two selectmen, that as soon as you get a quorum, you can't do it in a non-public meeting. But let me just throw out, I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I think either can work, but I will just throw one thing out there. I mean, to the extent that this is a negotiation, I know that the role I played for the board in the area of collective bargaining was to get guidance from the board, go to the negotiations. You could possibly have done those things in public. It would have been ludicrous. Keep the board informed, and you did the same thing back in 5, 6, and 7. And to Ben's point, if you go to the public, it may not be, we may go well beyond, another 50 years or whatever. So I think that there is some merit to a couple of people being, involved in the same way that I don't think anybody had a problem with feeling like they were left out of the CBAs or not. I knew what things the board would go along with, what they wouldn't, and what was gray, and I brought all the gray things back, and the board decided. So I wouldn't have a problem with that. The only comment that I would make is that if there's two people that are going to be involved, I think that Phil ought to be one of them because he's shown a lot of interest in the issues related to the state. And I think it would be logical that the chairman be the other one. So I wouldn't have a problem either way.
And that works for me.
Yes, but does it work for you, Mr. Pierce? You're one of the ones
Well,
that had a problem with it.
I think that it's a good idea all by itself, like Richard said, that when he was negotiating with the union, that worked out pretty good. The contracts worked out pretty good from what I could see. And I have no problem with two people talking directly to DOT On the other hand, I don't see a reason to get the Hampton Beach Area Commission involved with any of that conversation at all.
I just want to say that when I discussed this with Mr. Welch, I suggested either Ben or Phil, mainly because they were new, and it would, bring them up to speed on what's going on. So that's the only reason I did that. I agree with you about what you just said about the area commission. I mean, I don't see why, here we are the elected officials.
We're the ones going to bite the bullet either way.
The Hampton Beach Area Commission is an advisory state commission. So,
And again,
You wanna say something?
legal opinion from the town. Our town attorney says there's no legal basis for them to spearhead the discussion. They have none, which is gained from the Hampton Beach Commission or Hampton Beach planning document. That they just don't have the legal authority to do so. So it's just just not professional grade to go down that way. When Selectman Nichols is representing the town, he's a selectman. He's an elected person. He's chairman of the board. It's a town issue. They're town people. Here we're talking about a state employee does not reside in the community. We don't even know how often he's down here. And he's going to be establishing an MOU without legal basis, and it just makes no sense.
yeah, I agree. And I know in the past, the people, because I'm on the commission has, they've brought to a vote on advising people how to, advising the voters on how to vote. And I know that some of the members of the committee were uncomfortable because I feel that I felt that they were uncomfortable because they don't live in the town. So several of them did abstain, or at least two, I believe. So,
Can I add something?
Yeah.
To the, I would see a benefit, okay, if a meeting, as we've discussed, were to take place, and let's just say for the sake of the discussion, Rick and Phil were involved in that meeting, I would see a benefit to having the Hampton Beach Area Commission in some fashion, the chairman or whatever, involved in that in an advisory capacity, not running a meeting and, telling anybody what they're going to do. But that was the whole purpose. If you go to the RSA, I saw the email, I'm sure you read that, today or yesterday or whatever, Phil, so it's refreshed. That is the whole purpose, to bring together a group representing multiple entities, the town via the Board of Selectmen appointees, the village district by their appointees, the Chamber of Commerce, DOT, DRED, all the kind of stakeholders that are, so I think we ought to let them advise, and I think that would be a good thing, because I think that there's a benefit. Fred, you've been involved in I think that having somebody like John Nine involved would bring something to the party.
Well, the commission always brings something to the party. There's no question about that. I think the question is, who is the agreement between? And maybe he acts as the ombudsman.
That's what I saw it as.
As something instead of something else. He's trying to act right now as a facilitator to get the people together.
Yep.
I think that's it.
And I think that's a good thing. Yep.
And I think it really does boil down to the selectmen representing the taxpayers of the community making decisions on what they think is best for the community.
Some of those decisions are going to be beyond the scope of the Board of Selectmen anyway,
That's true, they are.
Yep.
or potentially could be.
But those decisions you won't be involved in because you can't become involved in.
Well, they have to go to the voters.
Well, no, you have to go to the voters. It may be something we can't do as a town.
Right. Beyond our permitted activities.
Right.
Is there anything to be lost, for example, by Rick and Phil attending a meeting and giving
No.
us some feedback after that? I mean, quite frankly, you and I played a similar role in the DRED.
No,
So,
that's true.
and I think that was productive. And to be honest with you, I don't, nothing personal, but if I was tasked with the CBA thing and I had to have 4 other selectmen there, I don't think I
Well, I
would.
understand.
Yeah, I don't think I would have wanted to,
You
know,
do have a
too many
chance
cooks.
in the CBA process. You are able to lay out for the selectmen in a non-public meeting what you believe the parameters of a negotiation would be. They're able to input what they think the parameters should be, and you can have a meeting of the minds as far as what your negotiation position should be. I'm not clear if we can give representatives to this meeting that kind of direction, because we don't even have an agenda. I don't think I saw an agenda as to what was going to be discussed with this meeting that was canceled for tomorrow. So do you want to see an agenda? Does the board want to see an agenda to give those representatives guidance? Because how are we then, as board members,
That's a
all
good
five
idea.
of us, how are the other three of us going to be able to legally get the information that Rick and Phil will glean from the meeting to be scheduled?
Yep.
How they can't communicate that to us without
I think that's a good
exception
idea.
under 91, can they?
There is no exception on the 91 to that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So they would have to hold that information to themselves effectively, or it would become a meeting.
Until it was ready to be brought to the board.
Right. So it would have to you'd have to have a Chinese wall, I think, whatever that term is.
Yes.
Between your activities in discussing those discussions and the time it's ready to go public. Just be clear on that.
We've been talking to
There is nothing in the way of an exclusion.
I didn't think so.
we've been talking to Dred for 2 years, and it's still not ready to come to the board.
And we haven't made any progress whatsoever with DOT, though, so there might be some fruit to be gleaned from this basket.
The other
So-
thing that was a little
Hey,
different when Rick and I were participating with Dred, there really weren't any controversial issues.
No.
There was, I mean, we went there, we talked about the issues, we agreed to them. They could be completely discussed in a public forum. There were, there were
That's why
draft.
I suggest the public. I mean,
Yeah,
to me,
there were draft memorandums. If somebody asked for, I remember Charlie Preston
Yeah.
asked for a copy of our
Right.
call. I didn't see any reason why Charlie can't have a copy. No.
It seems
No
to me
copy.
that meeting would have been beneficial to have for the public to hear it. Now, does it make sense to ask that these future meetings have an agenda ahead of time?
It always makes sense to know what you're going to talk about.
So will that fit for when someone asks you to schedule a meeting?
Because that's the board's sentiment, and I'm not going to schedule a meeting. I'm just going to pass the information on.
Mhm.
Somebody's going to say, I can be there, whoever you designate. But I agree with you that I think there ought to be an agenda for any meeting. You've got to know why you're going there and what you're going to talk about.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
specifically in terms of this, the base document is, there's the RSA 216J1. It talks about the Hampton Beach Area Master Plan, which is now over 10 years, and there's been a lot of water over the dam in terms of what goes on and the realities on the ground of economy, what's going on at the state. So that's the base document you're talking about, and so you're talking about something that really doesn't even hold water anymore. And then you're talking about the Hampton Beach Area Commission. You're talking about their annual report last year on page 4, and it specifically says coordinating efforts between the town. They're talking about coordinating the efforts. And this is a state employee that doesn't reside in town. And I peeled this offline. And it's a nice annual report. But it talks about coordinating efforts between the town, the Hampton Beach Village District, and different state agencies on establishing a comprehensive MOU that would establish who is responsible for what and where. Now, I just find that a little bit general. It's going off of 10-year-old documents. It's talking about advice to the town and state agencies to accomplish the goals set out in the 50-year plan. So I think this has nothing but from the ground to go seriously much higher in terms of where we're starting out as a base, and then the authority for this organization to have a meeting when our town attorney says that they have no authority.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll act under your directives, Mr. Chair.
So you're still saying that you don't want a meeting unless it's public?
I don't want any meeting unless it's public, and then I'm saying there's no legal authority for the HVAC, someone who doesn't live in Hampton, to be coordinating the town of Hampton, the Hampton Village Precinct, and state agencies. We're talking right now about the inability to communicate with Dred, 2 and 3 weeks. We're talking 5 layers. We're talking $1 million of services that go unreimbursed. I mean, do we just keep on playing this playbook that doesn't work for us? Do we just keep on doing it, or do we, kind of change the game? And I would be with the latter.
I'm not sure if changing the game changes the result, but that's
the intent.
Being pessimistic.
Why don't we suggest to your caller and the person who wants to make the meeting that we have a meeting in public with DOT?
Certainly could do that.
Counteroffer.
Yep.
That would,
I don't, with
I
Ben's
still don't know
point,
what the
with
issues are
Ben's-
going to be discussed. I would love to know exactly what would be on this agenda.
I
with
can
this.
give you probably,
I mean,
we did this
are
with
we
Red.
talking sidewalks? Is that the issue?
Oh, sure, that's issue, sidewalks,
Lights.
crosswalks, lights.
I think the town was pretty clear on that.
When we started meeting with Dred,
The meeting was pretty clear on that.
we made a sheet up that showed areas where the town and Dred have commonalities of interest. And I think we operated off that sheet. And I also have one for DOT. Of course, it's now expanded. I haven't updated it, but certainly all those issues are going to come up because they're important. They're important to DOT. They're also, in the long run, important to us for tax impact and the impact on our taxpayers.
and there's also a possibility that we can get these two groups to work together to work with us. Meaning that if Dred has some funding they could use for sidewalks, for example, that DOT does not have, quote unquote, maybe
Well-
we can work out some kind of a combo MOU. Follow me? Mutual.
Well, Dred is completely different than DOT because it's a self-funded agency.
And so is DOT.
Well, no, they're not
I
self-funded.
mean, a lot of it geared on,
funded.
well, yeah, but it's all geared on gasoline receipts.
Well, it's geared on that and federal disbursements and other taxes that come along and sort of filter in there. The commonality of interest is quite different between the two agencies,
But the old argument,
practical standpoint.
the old argument goes back to this, Fred. Here we are, this is Hampton. All the rest of that is state, called the state of New Hampshire. Money goes out, and they keep saying it goes in this pocket over here, and we don't talk to each other over there in Concord. That is a bunch of baloney sauce. They take the check, it's cashed by the treasurer or whatever of the state of New Hampshire. Same treasurer, the person who cashes that check can write checks. So I don't buy that manure myself.
I think we're kind of going around in circles.
No, we are.
What I heard was a consensus that it should be a public meeting and there should be an agenda.
And do you
Yep.
have the direction that you need, Mr.
I
Welch?
do.
Okay. Moving on to the consent